Hey guys, here we are at 5th part of the story. Where starts right after the Sasuke retrieval, Jiraiya takes Naruto on a 3-year training trip. Taking his training seriously, Naruto strives to become the best he can and learn everything that Konoha denied him. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe button. Now, let's jump right in. Jiraiya looked at his student and shook his head. So, another bounty, eh? Naruto nodded as he sealed up all of his equipment in several scrolls containing weapons, seals, medical supplies and anything else he could think of, and placed them in the containment seals on his pouches. I don't really need the money or experience, but I hear this guy's been terrorizing a small mining town. Jiraiya smirked at his student. Well, just make sure you're careful and don't get cocky. You may be powerful, but even the strongest of people can be taken down. You tell me that every time I leave, Naruto said with an amused smirk. You worried about your precious student? Worried that I might not have any new material for my books if you go and get yourself killed, Jiraiya shot back as they went through their usual banner. You do know if I see any material that I even suspect has me or the girls in, I will castrate you, right? Questioned the blonde with a sadistic grin on his face. Jiraiya snorted, kind of hard to find out when you refuse to read my work. Naruto shrugged, I'll just have your publisher tell me. After all, ever since my novel came out he's liked me more than you. Jiraiya gave him a mock glare as Naruto returned it with a cheeky grin. I'll probably be gone a few weeks, so don't wait up. Yeah, whatever, Jiraiya waved him off, just get going. Naruto grinned as he left their small hotel room. Two people were walking through the desert towards Suna, and while they were both wearing the same uniforms they couldn't be more different. One of them had blonde hair that was tied in a ponytail and had large piece of hair hanging over one side of his face to cover his eye, with a large straw hat that was covering his head and had stringers falling around it. The other person was short and had a hunched over back and was wearing a bandana over his mouth, covering the lower half of his face so that all you could see were his black eyes. On top of his head was a straw hat with a single tassel, which he used to cover and hide the rest of his face. Both of them were wearing black cloaks with red clouds, the clothing of Akatsuki, and were S-class missing ninja. However, both of them were so different from each other it was hard to imagine they were partners. I'm telling you, Sasori-senpai, art lasts for a single brilliant moment before it withers away into nothingness. Yeah, the blonde one said. Sasori sighed as he listened to his partner. They had been having this argument since they became partners. Sasori always wondered what leader Sama had been thinking when he put the two of them together. And I'm telling you, Deidre, art is eternal. True beauty lasts forever and never dies over time, that way people can enjoy it longer. Sasori-senpai, as much as I respect you, I have to tell you you're wrong. True art is. Gaara looked out over Sunagakure from the top of the Kazekage Tower. A lot had changed in the past 3 years since he had been beaten by Naruto during the Chunin exams. Gaara was wearing the robes of the Kazekage over his Tsunajonin attire. Absent was the gourd that he usually wore on his back. It had been over 3 years since that battle where his whole life had been changed for the better. After Naruto had beaten him, Gaara had realized that the path he had been taking did not grant one true strength or happiness, and neither did it vilify his existence. Wanting the strength that boy had, Gaara had begun to make amends, starting with his family Temari and Kankuro. Making amends with them had actually been easy, since despite being afraid of him they both still loved him. However, getting the villagers to see him as his siblings did was a whole different kettle of fish. Well, if they had fish in Suna, it had taken a lot more work to get them to stop fearing him and a constant effort on his part. However, through hard work and with the support of his siblings, he had been able to overcome the hate the villagers had on him and gain acceptance. And just last year Gaara had been accepted as the God-Ime Kazekage. As he stared at the village he had sworn to protect, he wondered where the person who had made this all possible was and how he was doing. Naruto had been his first friend, the first person to accept him and the only person he knew who could understand him. It was only because of the blonde shinobi that Gaara was able to change and gain the acceptance he had always craved. He knew that Naruto was currently on a training trip with Jiraiya of the Sennin. The rumors and stories that had spread about Naruto had reached everywhere in the elemental nations. It made Gaara curious to see how powerful Naruto had become. Kazekage-sama, Gaara turned his head to see one of the council members behind him. The meeting is beginning soon. Gaara nodded. Very well. He looked out over the village one last time before following the council member to the council chamber. The council chamber itself was merely a large cylindrical room with a circular table. Around the table were 12 seats for those who were a part of Suna's council. Gaara entered the chamber and took his seat between Baki and Uura. Baki had been Gaara's Jonin sensei during the invasion of the Chunin exams. After the invasion had failed, Baki had been the one who had pushed for them not to do anything rash and try to get the peace treaty between Konoha and Tsunaranige. Later he had been appointed to the advisory council for his loyalty to Suna, and had been the one who promoted and supported Gaara's rise to the position of Kazekage. Baki had always been of the belief that loyalty to your village was one of the most important things to a shinobi. No matter what the situation was, he would always strive towards doing what he felt was best for the village. Baki now wore the robes of a counselor over his jonin attire. He still had a bandana on his head with a cloth covering half of his face. Yura was the jonin who had originally been in charge of the guards who watched the gate into Sunagakuer. 4 years ago he had managed to work his way up towards the position on the advisory council. Yura wore counselor robes and wrap-around bandana. He had spiky bangs that covered half of his face and a small beard. The Chunin exams are coming soon, one of the counselors stated as this was Suna's year to host the exams. I am looking forward to the results. Yura stood from his seat to garner everyone's attention, as am I. However, I have received some rather disturbing information on a rumor that has come up recently. What kind of rumors? Asked Baki as he looked at the man. This information is from Jiraiya of the Legendary 3, Yura stated, getting everyone's attention. Have you all heard of a group called Akatsuki? Mumbling surrounded the announcement of that name, while many people knew of them, most thought they were a simple mercenary group. Gaara looked at Yura as he continued, they seem to be a powerful group made of 9 S-class ninja who are after a specific group of people. They are after Jinchuriki. The noise in the room increased as everyone began to talk about the information. Many of the advisors were looking at Gaara, who remained impassive at the information. Furthermore, I believe that because of the threat these people pose, I think it would behoove us to tighten security during the Chunin exams, just to be on the safe side, Yura continued. Do you believe these people pose a serious threat to Kazekage-sama? Asked one of the other council members. The information itself comes from Jiraiya-sama, Yura said in answer. If he feels that they are a threat, I believe it would be best to err on the side of caution. You make many good points, Counselor Yura, stated Gaara, who had up until this point been silent. When the young Kazekage spoke, everyone quieted down. It was a rare event for Gaara to speak at the meetings, but when he did, they were often said with a wisdom not usually found in one so young. We will do as you suggest and up the security measures during the Chunin exams. It would also be a good show of strength while the other nation's shinobi are here. I would like you to handle the security detail. Can you do it, Yura? Of course, Kazekage-sama, Yura said with a bow. The rest of the meeting was mainly listening to the various pieces of information about the Chunin exams, as well as the security measures Yura was going to take. Then this meeting is adjourned, Baki said as the members of the council stood up to leave. Gaara stood up as well and began to make his way to the Kazekage Tower. Since he could not sleep, he might as well finish the paperwork. Yura began to walk through the halls of the council buildings with one of the other members. Well done, Yura, the man said. It is a fine idea to tighten the security on the village. Even Kazekage-sama seemed to think so. I'm just glad I could help my superiors that I've been working for the past 4 years, Yura said in a humble tone. Besides, this information came from Jiraiya-sama himself, so I had to make a decision quickly. Stopping, Yura's eyes widened as he felt an intense headache. Grabbing his head, the man bent down as he tried to get the pain to leave. Hey, are you alright? The other council member asked. Yes, I just haven't been getting enough sleep, Yura said, straightening up. The Jonin counselor shook his head and began to walk again. What was that? Wondered Yura as he continued walking. Deidre and Sasori continued their trek across the hot desert of Suna. Deidre looked over at Sasori and had to wonder how the man could not be bothered by this stifling heat. Looking out over the desert, Deidre decided to make conversation. So those people Orochimaru tricked are up ahead, yeah? Deidre asked. When Sasori didn't answer, Deidre looked out across the dunes. It seems that for some reason he leaked our information and turned into a traitor, yeah? We don't have a choice, it seems, Sasori said after a long moment of silence. I don't know what he's like after using that jutsu either. Sasori spoke, referring to the body possession jutsu the snake Sennin had made. The puppet user looked at Deidre, who had grabbed a bag from his pouch. Will you be alright with just that bag? Our opponent is a Jinchuriki after all? I wouldn't worry about me, Deidre said as he unzipped a pouch on his waist and stuck his hand in. My jutsu are all artistic, so I came up with my favorite, number 18, yeah. Because our opponent is the one-tails, yeah. Deidre brought his hand out of the pouch to show that the bottom of his hand had a mouth on it. As they continued walking, they eventually came upon the gates of Suna. Along the walls were several dozen guards who were currently staring at the two figures that were coming their way in surprise. Before any of the shinobi had a chance to react, Yura, who had come up just moments ago, killed them by activating several traps. Walking to the front of the gate, Ura got down on one knee as he bowed to the two of them as they walked up. Sasori and Deidre walked up to the bowed-down figure. "Well done," Sasori said in his gruff voice. "Do you remember me?" "Yes, sir." "Of course, Sasori-sama," Ura said, still in a kneeling position. "Good, since your memories have returned, you are my faithful servant," Sasori stated, pleased to see that his slave seal had done its work properly. "All right," Deidre said, "if you'd forgotten I might have had to use my jutsu." "Yeah." Deidre looked at the mouth on his left hand as it finished chewing the clay he had to eat. "Alright then, here we go." The mouth coughed up some clay and Deidre began to mold it into a bird. "Sasori, your husband should watch to, yeah," Deidre said in a teasing voice. He threw the bird into the hair and held his hands in a hand sign. There was a puff of smoke, and when it cleared, the little bird that Deidre had molded was now twice as large as Deidre himself. Jumping on the bird, Deidre threw off his hat and grinned as he looked back at Sasori. "What do you think of my artistic modeling, yeah?" Deidre asked Sasori as he flew into the air, not giving the man a chance to speak. The Ichibi Jinchuriki had a date with his art. Naruto sighed as he looked out over the desert. Everything looked the same for miles and miles. All that he could see were sand dunes and more sand dunes. Now he knew why Jiraiya had never taken him to Suna. "I wonder how Gaara could stand this desert, and this heat." Putting his hood up, Naruto started walking out into the desert. As he walked, he found himself glad that he had started taking some bounty hunter work, otherwise it would have been much harder to escape from Muro-sensei. After his meeting with Konan, Jiraiya had asked where Naruto had gone off to. In order to make an excuse, Naruto had claimed he had done some bounty hunter work. This seemed to convince Jiraiya, and he had actually started to give the blonde bounties as a form of training. Whenever Naruto was out catching a bounty, he would usually be able to visit or teleport one of the 4 girls who had come into his life. That way he could for the most part avoid Jiraiya's constant lecherous comments. It was also a good alibi for what he was about to do, since when accepting a bounty Naruto would often disappear for about a week or 2. Naruto sighed again as he looked out over the desert and thanked Kemi that his cloak hid him from the sun. "Still, this heat is stifling." Gaara sat in his office after having just finished the last bit of paperwork. A part of him wondered why other cages like Tsunade always complained about having too much paperwork to do. Of course, because Gaara could not sleep, he was able to get all of his paperwork finished faster. Still, he mused that it would be easier for them to just do the work rather than complain and throw it off. As he continued on with his musings, Gaara looked out of the window behind his desk and frowned when he spotted a giant white bird flying outside. Deidre grinned as he looked down at the village where the One-Tails was supposed to be. Moving the hair out of his eye, he revealed that he was wearing a viewing lens and camera. He pressed a button on the side and began to count the number of ninja on the roofs. Once he got a good lock on all 3 sky guards, he made 3 small clay spiders. "This village's artistic design isn't too shabby," he said with a large grin. "It will definitely be worth ruining, yeah." Deidre threw the spiders and made a hand seal. There was a small puff of smoke and the 3 spiders landed near the 3 guards. The spiders jumped onto the guards and Deidre made another hand sign as he channeled some chakra into his creations. Art is a bang. The 3 clay spiders exploded on guards. They were small explosions, but each one was enough to kill the guards they were attached to. Deidre made his claybird dive down as he jumped off and landed on the roof of the Kazekage Tower. Infiltration successful. Deidre smirked only for his eyes to widen as he looked up. Standing in front of him was Gaara, garbed in his maroon robe and one strap over the shoulder flak jacket. Before Deidre could even speak, a wave of sand came at him from the left. Deidre jumped into the air just as the sand crashed into where he had been standing. Landing on his bird, he looked at Gaara, who began to wave his arms as if guiding an orchestra. The sand began to move towards Deidre as Gaara jumped on it. The mad bomber looked at Gaara and smirked. "Ho, if it isn't the Ichibi Jinchuriki, yeah, how did you know I was attacking?" he asked. "In this desert," Gaara said in his monotone voice, "no bird like that exists." "Hey, seems like all my sneaking was in failure, yeah," Deidre said with a grin. "But whatever, at least now I don't need to look for you, yeah." Gaara said nothing as he raised his hands. Deidre began to prepare some clay bomb birds for his attack. Just a little ways outside the gates of Suna, a large wave of sand shot into the air. There was hundreds of tons of sand from the desert that Gaara could control, and all of it headed for Deidre. The sand turned into huge claws that soon made a grab at Deidre in an attempt to crush him. Deidre's bird weaved in between the attacks as he rummaged through his bag. Pulling out his hands, he made several more clay birds, these ones of a more sleek design than some of his other work, as he threw them at Gaara. A hand seal later and there was a burst of smoke. The birds grew a little bit and came to life as they flew around the sand and headed straight towards the young Kazekage. Seeing them coming, Gaara manipulated the sand around him into a shield to protect himself from the explosion. A small eye appeared just outside of the dome of sand that Gaara was in and locked onto Deidre, who was looking at the sand with a smirk. It's like the eggshell protects the inner contents. Deidre didn't get the chance to say anything else as sand began to encircle him, compressing itself in the hopes of crushing him. Just as the sand fully compressed into a sphere, Deidre shot out, however the sand latched onto his arm as he was falling down. Sabakyu, Gaara said as he made his hand into a fist. Deidre's eyes widened in pain as he felt his arm being crushed. As Deidre fell, he made an owl with his uncrushed hand, making a hand sign. The owl grew and Deidre landed on it as he got away from the sand, though it was not enough to save the rest of his arm. The blonde bomber grimaced as he looked at the stump where his arm had been. "You're good, yeah," Deidre said as his remaining arm went into his pouch and began to gather clay. The bomber realized that he only had a little bit of clay left. He looked over at Gaara and tried to analyze his opponent and find a weakness. Looking at the sand Gaara was on, he realized that it was most likely specially made sand that he carried in his gourd. Realizing that was where he got his ultimate defense sand, Deidre devised a plan. Molding his clay, he made one of his most powerful explosives. Deidre smirked as he readied his strategy. On the ground, Kankuro, Baki and several other ninja were looking up at the large sphere of sand next to the smaller one. It was clear the Kazekage was fighting. "From looking at the shape, we can assume that Kazekage-sama's opponent is Akatsuki," Baki said as the ninja gathered around him and Kankuro. All of the ninja were currently staring at the battle taking place, looking unsure of what to do when faced with an opponent who could remain airborne. "It's just as I thought," Kankuro said as his hands turned into fists. The minute he had seen the giant wave of sand coming from the desert, Kankuro figured that the Akatsuki had somehow snuck into their village and that Gaara was battling them. "Hurry and prepare for battle. We're going to assist the Kazekage," Baki said as he began to order their forces. Medical teams set up a barrier. As the ninja began to follow Baki's orders, said ninja turned to look at Kankuro. Kankuro turned to look at Baki. "What is it?" "We need to consider what will happen if Gaara loses control and Shukaku comes out again," Baki said in a solemn voice. While the Jonin had faith in Gaara's abilities and did not want to consider that this could happen, he felt it would be best for the village if they took all variables into account. "That won't happen," Kankuro shook his head. "Gaara won't harm the people of this village." Flashback. "You know, I didn't want to say this, but I think this is one of your craziest ideas," Kankuro said to Gaara, who was staring out at the desert. "I mean, our superiors don't really like you, and the village is deathly afraid of you. By separating from us and trying to involve yourself with the regular shinobi out of the blue like this, it's going to be hard." He looked at his brother, who just continued to stare at the desert. He was unsure what to think when Gaara had told him that he wanted to integrate himself into the standard shinobi forces. Though he knew Gaara had changed since the failed invasion of Konoha, how the first conscious words that came out of his brother's mouth was an apology for all the things he had done to him and to Mari. He knew his brother wanted to change the way he was looked at, but he still didn't think this was a good idea. Gaara was silent for a moment as he listened to Kankuro. "I know, but by just waiting, I get attacked by an even greater anguish. All one can do is create his own path through hard work, without being a loner and taking the easy path." Gaara fell silent for a moment as he tried to put what he wanted to say into words. "Someday I hope to be like him." Kankuro stayed silent as he listened to Gaara, knowing who he was speaking of. "So that's why I, as one of the Sans shinobi, aim to be Kazekage, to bond with and live for this village." "Gaara," Kankuro said, awed by how much his brother had truly changed after his battle with that orange-clad shinobi. It was one of the things Kankuro would have never thought possible, that some boy who no one had really thought much about and seemed to be the dead last of his graduating class could not only beat Gaara but also said something that fundamentally changed the young redhead. "Through hard work I want to be respected by everybody. I got that from Naruto Uzumaki. But up until now, bonds have been nothing more than an annoyance, to the point I would want to kill everything. But when I fought Naruto, he told me, he gains his strength by protecting his precious people because they give him a reason to exist. I saw that strength for myself and I feel like I can understand just what he meant a little better. Hate, sadness and even happiness, to be able to share these things with another person." Gaara looked out at the desert with a contemplative look on his face. "I learned that with my fight from Naruto Uzumaki. He knew pain like I did, and he taught me that you can change that path." Gaara nodded to himself as if to confirm his beliefs. "One day I wish to be needed by somebody, not as a frightening weapon." Gaara turned his head and Kankuro saw a small smile on it, but as the Sans Kazekage. Flashback end. Naruto looked up into the sky as he finally saw Suna in sight. Channeling chakra into his eyes, Naruto zoomed in on the battle going on overhead. "Looks like Gaara's already been started his battle," Naruto sighed, well then I'd better. Naruto was cut off as his instincts forced him to jump from his spot just as a giant tail crashed down where he had been, looking at the tail. Naruto followed it to a hunchbacked figure. Naruto recognized it as a Kasuna no Sasori from the description Kona-chan gave him. The blonde looked at Sasori with a smirk. You know it's rude to try and kill someone without even introducing yourself. He was answered with the tail trying to impale him. Moving into a series of backflips, Naruto got some distance between him and Sasori. Said man looking at him with narrowed eyes, "Who are you?" Sasori asked. "Oh, no one important," Naruto said with a smirk even though Sasori could not see it through his face mask. "I'm just trying to get through to help the Kazekage." "Then I am afraid I cannot let you pass, and if you try I am going to have to kill you," Sasori said as he took off his cloak and got down all fours to reveal that he was inside a puppet. It had a large tail that was coming out of an orange mask. The legs and arms had joints that made odd clicking noises as they moved. "I do not know who you are, but if you really are here to help the Kazekage then I am afraid I must kill you." Naruto's smirk widened. "Well, you know that's fine by me since I was already planning on killing you anyways, Sasori." Sasori was surprised that this person knew who he was but did not show. He focused his eyes on the hooded shinobi. There was nothing about the man that would reveal the type or style of fighting he used. The large black cloak covered his entire frame all the way to the feet. The hood covered up his hair, and because of the face mask the puppet user could not even see who it was. Naruto raised a hand towards Sasori and pointed two fingers at him. "Raiten, Byakuren." A large bolt of lightning so bright it looked white was shot from Naruto's fingers straight at Sasori. Despite being in a puppet, Sasori moved out of the way quickly. Naruto appeared right in front of the puppet user and was about to attack only to be forced to dodge Sasori's tail. Jumping back, Naruto was forced to dodge a hail of senbon. According to Kona-chan, those senbon are poisonous. "I don't think poison will work on me, but it will still take time to flush it from my system, so I better not get hit by any of those." Thinking on his feet, Naruto thrust a closed fist forward as another burst of senbon came his way. Fuuten, Genkotsu no Kaze. A giant blast of wind in the shape of a large fist blasted the senbon away and headed for Sasori. The puppet user managed to move out of the way in time to dodge. But Naruto had already calculated where he would be and was waiting for him with a spinning ball of chakra in his hand. Naruto thrust the Rasengan right into the puppet user. A body was launched out of the one Naruto had just destroyed, landing several feet away before standing up. "It's been a long time since anyone could defeat Haruko," Sasori said with a voice that sounded really young. As Sasori looked up, Naruto saw that the person still looked like a teenage boy. According to Conan, Sasori had turned himself into a puppet when he was younger. This not only gave him eternal life, but also made him stop aging at the time he had been turned into a puppet. "I will enjoy adding you to my collection," Sasori said as he pulled out a scroll and unrolled it. There was a puff of smoke and Naruto found himself staring at the figure that came out. It was a puppet, with an olive complexion, spiky black hair and a long brown cloak. "This puppet was the hardest one to get in my collection," Sasori spoke. "You should feel honored to see it." "I see, so you turned the Sundaime Kazekage into a puppet," Naruto said as he narrowed his eyes. While the Kazekage were not a cage of Konoha, they were still cages, a position that Naruto respected no matter what village it came from. So to see one of the village's cages having their corpse desecrated and used by someone pissed the blonde shinobi off. However, he knew that he needed to keep his wits about him and so did not let any of his emotions come through to cloud his judgment. "Correct," Sasori said as he began to manipulate his fingers. In response, the Sandaime Kazekage came forward. One of the Kazekage's hands came up and several large wires came out shooting towards Naruto, said blonde unsealed Susanoo as he dodged out of the way of the wires. He rolled to the left just as the Kazekage shot several poison blades at him. Coming up on his feet, Naruto spun around and slashed several wires apart with a Kaze no Yag before they could come at him. Naruto was forced to continue dodging wires and knives as Sasori tried to catch him off guard. Rolling under a set of wires, Naruto found himself suddenly immobilized as several latched onto him from behind. The Kazekage lifted up his other hand and poison gas shot out of it towards Naruto, covering the entire area around the blonde in noxious fumes. Sasori waited for a minute and when nothing happened assumed the hooded man had died. Just as he was about to bring the Sundaime Kazekage back, the area that was covered with poison exploded, revealing the Naruto that Sasori had captured to be a Bushin Daibakua. Naruto burst from the ground right next to the Kazekage with a Rasengan pointed at the human puppet. Sasori managed to move the Kazekage puppet out of the way to avoid being destroyed, but he was not fast enough to keep his prized puppet from losing its arm. As the Kazekage moved back, a large pillar of sand began to coalesce in front of it. The top of the pillar gained a sharp point. The blonde shinobi knew what this was. Like Gaara, the Sandaime Kazekage had the ability to manipulate and control sand. Naruto was unsure how it was done. But given the name Iron Sand, Naruto assumed the man's bloodline allowed him to manipulate the iron particles found in the sand, possibly through magnetism or some other form of control. It was said that the Sandaime Kazekage had created the ability based off of Shukaku itself, hoping to find a way to utilize the power of the desert without the Baijuo. The pillar soon came barreling down point first towards Naruto. The Uzumaki Namikaze air resealed Susanoo as he dodged the giant pillar. Naruto came at the Kazekage with another Rasengan and tried to smash into the puppet. A sphere of sand covered the Kazekage's frame to block the ball of destructive chakra. Sand shot everywhere as the Rasengan drilled into it, but despite the power behind the jutsu, Naruto was unable to penetrate the protective sand sphere. He was forced to jump back and dodge several spikes that shot out of the protective sand, moving into an impressive series of twirls and flips as the sand spikes shot out and then flew past him. As soon as Naruto's feet touched the ground, he rolled to the left, dodging another large pillar that crashed into the sand. Getting onto his feet, Naruto took out a scroll from his pouch. Unsealing, a large torrent of water came out. Naruto went through a few hand seals before calling out his jutsu. Hyotan, Tokatsuryu no Jutsu. A giant dragon formed out of the water before freezing over and turning into ice. The great 60-foot beast turned its yellow eyes towards the Kazekage and flew forward. The iron sand of the Kazekage came to the puppet's protection. When the ice dragon hit, the sand began to actually freeze over. This technique had taken Naruto a year to create and master. Naruto combined wind and water and then condensed it to the point that the water became a more malleable version of ice. Naruto was able to not only shape it into the form of a dragon but upon impact would reduce the amount of wind chakra in the technique, melting the ice before compressing the water with his wind chakra again to make anything that was wet freeze over. It took more chakra than most of his ice techniques, especially since he was out in the desert, but the surprise and disbelief he saw which caused Sasori to hesitate from an ice jutsu being used in the desert were well worth it. Unsealing Susanoo again, Naruto shot towards the Kazekage puppet, using wind chakra to increase the length of the blade and sharpen it to the point where only IF metals in the entire world would be able to withstand it. Naruto's blade moved in several flashes of light as the blonde appeared behind the Sandaime Kazekage. Naruto resealed the blade as the Kazekage fell apart into 6 different segments. Sasori looked at Naruto, who was breathing a little heavier than before. "You are definitely impressive. I will enjoy turning you into a puppet." Naruto smirked. "I'll be taking you out long before you can turn me into anything." "We'll see," Sasori said as he removed his shirt to reveal that he was in fact a puppet himself, with 2 5-point propeller blades came out of his elbows and several scrolls on his back. Naruto also noticed that where the man's heart would be was a container with the kanji for here. He assumed that that was where Sasori's weak point was. "It's been a while since I've used myself," Sasori stated as he raised a hand before a large scroll detached from his back and connected to the hand. Aiming at the blonde, Sasori shot out a powerful jet of water towards Naruto. Said blonde merely smirked as he brought his hand forward and infused his own chakra into the jet of water. He wrested control of the water from Sasori and sent it right back at him. Sasori jumped to the left as he was forced to dodge his own attack. "Using one of my most powerful elements against me was a foolish move," Naruto stated, and Sasori could almost see the smirk on his face. "I apologize," Sasori said as he held up his other hand. "Why don't we try this one?" A powerful blast of fire shot out, coming at Naruto, who began to run away from the fire, which started following him as Sasori kept the blonde in his sights. Naruto was able to just barely stay ahead of the flame and realized he needed more speed. Making a single hand sign, Naruto charged chakra into several seals located throughout his body. Kai. Were it not for his cloak, Sasori would have been able to see several lines begin to run along Naruto's arm, legs, chest and back. As Naruto did have the cloak on, he did not see those, so when the blonde shinobi suddenly disappeared in a burst of pure speed, Sasori was shocked. It was only a case of hard-earned shinobi instincts that allowed him to dodge as Naruto appeared on his left with a massive Rasengan in hand. There was a large explosion as the Udoma Rasengan blew up and sent sand and dusts everywhere. Naruto came flying out of the blast like a bat out of hell as he launched himself towards Sasori. Said opponent tried to launch a jet of flame at him, but the blonde merely kicked up his speed again and disappeared. Sasori looked around for his opponent only to find him coming down from above. Sasori brought his 5-bladed propeller blades in an attempt to slice his opponent to ribbons. Naruto unsealed Susanoo for another round. Sasori jumped away when Naruto's blade became nothing more than several flashes of silver. The puppet user looked at his opponent before looking at where his blades used to be. He looked back at his opponent who was staring at him, the man's eyes completely dead, reminding the puppet master of a certain red-eyed shinobi in Akatsuki. Never in his life had Sasori faced such a strong opponent. So far he had been unable to actually do anything to the young man and was starting to find himself backed into a corner. Sasori realized would need to fight using something more powerful to beat this enemy, or perhaps more numerous? Sasori removed one of the scrolls from his back as a compartment in his chest opened up. There was a large puff of smoke as several hundred chakra strings were launched from the puppet's chest. When the smoke was blown away by a light wind, it revealed 100 puppets surrounding Naruto. "I would like to introduce you to my most powerful jutsu," Sasori said. Naruto was sure that if the man's puppet body could smirk, it would be. This jutsu has taken down entire fortresses before. Naruto looked around at all the puppets and sighed. "That's a lot of puppets," said Naruto in a voice that was as lazy and uncaring as a certain pineapple-headed Nara air. "Looks like I'm gonna have to use the jutsu," the blonde thought as he reached his hands into the two pouches at his hips. When he pulled them out, there were 5 Hiraishin kunai in between each finger. "While this is an impressive jutsu, I feel I should tell you." Naruto disappeared. Sasori looked around his opponent only to find him in the air. "My jutsu has destroyed whole armies." Naruto released the kunai into the puppets at an even 15 meters so that he could get the maximum effect for the sensor seal arrays. Before his opponents even had the chance to do anything, Naruto disappeared in a bright yellow flash of light. All around, Sasori's puppets were destroyed as they were smashed to pieces with powerful kicks and punches. Sliced into even segments with wind or blown to bits with a Rasengan. Sasori looked down when he felt an odd prick on his wooden body to see a sword sticking right through his heart container. He turned his head to see the person who had just defeated him. His hood had fallen off, revealing a mop of spiky blonde hair and cerulean blue eyes. "It seems you've beaten me," Sasori stated. "To think I had been fighting one of the people we've been trying to capture this whole time. Looks like I underestimate." Naruto sighed as he pulled out his sword and watched the body slump to the ground. Pulling up his hood, Naruto looked over towards the village and felt his eyes widen. He had been paying so much attention to his own fight that he had completely forgotten about Gaara's battle. Right now they're a giant thing falling towards the village. Remembering Konan's information that Sasori's partner had a fetish for explosions, Naruto set off at his maximum speed. While showing no outward emotion, Gaara mentally cursed as the giant explosive began to fall on the village. Redirecting his sand, Gaara created a large protective barrier over the village in the shape of a bowl. The giant and odd-shaped explosive hit the barrier and exploded. However, something happened that surprised and shocked both Gaara and Deidara. The explosion was beginning to warp towards one point as if it was caught in some kind of slipstream. Everything from the explosion to Gaara's sand was pulled into that one spot before it disappeared. "What happened to my art?" Deidara asked in frustration as he looked over to see an equally stunned Gaara. Just then something stuck into the head of his clay owl. He didn't even get the chance to see what it was before a large explosion took over the owl he was on. Gaara watched as Deidara's bird exploded in confusion. He was not sure what had just happened. When the explosion lived out its life, Gaara saw that Deidara was gone. The young Kage looked around to see if there was any trace of the Akatsuki member left, which was when he noticed a cloaked figure on the roof looking at him. He didn't know why, but Gaara felt a sense of familiarity when he saw the blue eyes of the stranger. When the Kage blinked, the figure was gone, causing him to wonder if he had seen it at all. Shaking his head, Gaara floated his sand down until he was on the ground, where he became surrounded by his ninja who were congratulating him on beating such a strong opponent. Soon after, the villagers who had seen Gaara's act of defending the village came out and began to cheer for him too. Despite not being hated anymore, Gaara was finding it awkward to receive such high praise and affection, especially when several women exclaimed how hot he was. Gaara. Turning his head, Gaara spotted Kankuro and Baki coming towards him. "Kankuro, Baki," Gaara greeted. "What happened?" Kankuro asked. "What was that when the explosion in your sand?" "I have no clue," Gaara said, shaking his head. "I have never seen anything like it." "So then if you didn't do that, then who did?" asked Baki. The three of them were silent amongst the cheering. None of them had an answer to that. Deciding not to worry about that for now, Gaara looked out at the people who were cheering his name. A small smile graced his lips. It was this kind of recognition and desire he had longed for, to be needed and wanted by people because of his willingness to protect his precious people. That brought an even bigger smile to Gaara's face as he thought about the person who told him that expression. He would have to thank Naruto the next time they saw each other. Several miles away from Suna, Deidara cursed as he sat down on the ground in exhaustion. Not only had he lost an arm but he multiple second and even a third-degree burn from that explosion. What the hell was that anyway? 1 minute he had been about to enact his plan to use the village as a means to force Gaara to use his special sand so he could set his trap, then his jutsu gets swallowed up and somehow ends up exploding on him. The very thought that his art could do that sounded ridiculous, and yet it had somehow happened. Deidara-senpai. Deidara cursed as he turned to Akatsuki's newest member. Toby was an oddball who wore an orange spiral mask centered around his right eye hole. He didn't know anything about the man other than he was childish and annoying. "What do you want?" Deidara asked with a glare on his face. "Oh, senpai is mad," Toby yelled as he threw his hands in the air and began to run around in circles. "Toby, I swear if you..." "Leader Sama wants a report on the One-Tails." Deidara turned to the man who interrupted him. Zetsu was a man who looked like he had been swallowed by a plant and had just his head sticking out. One half of him was white while the other was black. It had been a common joke among Akatsuki that this showed that Zetsu was half good and half evil. Of course there was some truth to that. The white side was fairly polite and not as interested in fighting while the black side was a lot more violent and liked to feast on human flesh. "I wasn't able to get the Ichibi," Deidara said, "but it wasn't my fault, yeah." He added hastily as he held his one good arm out in defense. "I was just about to capture him with my high-yield C3 when it got sucked into some kind of wormhole. It was weird, yeah. And then my own bird exploded and if it wasn't for a quick kuriwimi I would be dead, yeah." As Deidara explained what happened, Toby had gone silent. "His explosion was sucked up? Why does that sound so familiar?" "What about Sasori, where is he?" asked Zetsu. "Don't know," Deidara shrugged, "I didn't see him, yeah." "This is not good. We will need to report this to Pain-sama." Zetsu spoke. "Don't worry, Toby will tell him," Toby shouted out as he waved an arm around. After all, Toby is a good boy. It was night and Gaara was currently walking down the hall of the Kazekage Tower to finish the paperwork that this incident was going to cause. He would also have to send a letter to Konoha letting them know Akatsuki was on the move. Gaara stayed up like this most nights anyway. Since he had the Ichibi inside of him, Gaara could not sleep lest the giant Tanuki take over and go on a rampage. Though he had gotten used to not sleeping, walking up to his door, Gaara tensed at feeling a presence already inside. Being cautious, Gaara opened the door and stepped inside as he summoned his sand in case he had to fight. The sand returned to his gourd as soon as he saw who it was. It was the shinobi who he was positive had helped him sitting at his desk. With his feet propped onto it, the one Gaara was sure had used that odd jutsu. "Who are you?" Gaara asked wearily. Just because this guy had helped him did not automatically make him a friend. "I'm rather hurt that you would talk to a friend in such a way, Gaara," the cloaked figure said as he stood up. Gaara tensed as the man walked away from the desk, only for his hands to fall slack at his side as the man removed his hood and face mask. "Naruto?" Gaara questioned, and though it was still emotionless, those who knew Gaara could tell he was surprised. Naruto grinned. "It's been a long time, Gaara, a little over 3 years if I'm not mistaken." Gaara blinked once, twice, thrice. "That was you who helped me, wasn't it?" "Of course," Naruto said with a smirk. "I was on my way to visit since I had just captured a bounty near here when I saw your battle." Naruto shrugged as he walked up to Gaara. "I decided to step in when I saw that large explosion, which reminds me." Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a scroll. He put it out to Gaara, who was looking at it. Inside is the person who was that man's partner, I believe. He had been standing just outside the gates as I was making my way in. I believe he is a shinobi that was once a part of Suna and figured you may want his body back. Gaara took the scroll and noticed that it had the kanji for puppet on it. "I will give this to my morticians later." Gaara walked over to his desk and set the scroll down before turning back to Naruto. "It is good see you again, Namikaze." Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "So you know about that, eh?" Gaara actually smirked. "I doubt there is a single person within the elemental nations who has not heard of the rebirth of the Kirov Senko. Word traveled to Suna after Tsunade made a public announcement of your heritage to the people of Konoha. I bet that went over well," Naruto said with a grimace. "I wonder how they reacted?" "I'm afraid I couldn't tell you since I was not there," Gaara said as he sat down at his desk. The young Kazekage looked over at Naruto again. It was obvious the blonde had not been here just for a visit. The timing between the attack and Naruto's rescue were far too convenient for the blonde to have just arrived for a visit. But Gaara saw that it was equally obvious his first and possibly best friend did not want to talk about how he knew Akatsuki would attack. And while a part of Gaara wanted to ask about his knowledge on Akatsuki, another part decided to trust in his friend. "I hear you have been training with Jiraiya of the Sennin," Gaara said as he gestured to a seat in front of his desk. Naruto grinned as he sat down. "Yeah, I am. It's pretty awesome actually." It was a beautiful and peaceful day in Konoha as the sun began to rise, however one Tsunade Senju was not awake to see it. Said blonde Hokage was currently sleeping with her head on her desk, sake bottles littered both her table and the floor. Her head was lying on the paperwork that she did not do last night. It had a decent amount of drool on it, ruining the ink and ensuring Tsunade would have to rewrite it. However, Tsunade noticed none of this as she was blissfully unaware, until the door to her office slammed open. Tsunade-sama. WHA. I wasn't drinking, I swear. Tsunade's head shot off of the desk as she shouted. Shizune, who had barged in, was silent as she looked at the Hokage, then looked at all the sake bottles littering the floor. Honestly, Tsunade-sama, can you please not drink yourself into a stupor for once? Especially since you're on the job, Shizune said as she stared at the busty blonde Hokage. Tsunade flushed with embarrassment but recovered quickly as she coughed into her hand. So was there a reason you came barging in here? Shizune blinked before her eyes widened. Yes, we just received word from Suna that they were attacked by Akatsuki. What? Tsunade yelled in a voice so loud that everyone who was within 2 miles of the Hokage tower could hear it. Shizune nodded as she handed Tsunade a scroll. Thankfully the attack failed and Kazekage Dono was safe. Tsunade read the scroll and frowned. A friend of Suna. She looked up at Shizune. Do you know who this friend of Suna that the Kazekage is speaking of is? Shizune shook her head. No, Tsunade-sama, I only know that he helped Kazekage Dono sometime during the battle. Tsunade looked back at the scroll and thought, well, at least the Kazekage and Ichibi are safe from Akatsuki for now. Though I want you to inform Jiraiya of this friend of Suna and see if he can find any information on who this friend that the Kazekage mentioned is. Shizune bowed. Hi Tsunade-sama. Naruto frowned as he looked down at the small clearing. It was near the mining town where his mark was, but that was not what was causing him to frown. All around the small clearing were markers that no doubt marked graves. There were several people who were currently digging a hole for a new grave. That in itself was not weird. What was, however, that was there were more people who were putting someone into a coffin with that person still being alive and crying out in terror. Right next to those people was another man who, like the others putting the petrified man into the coffin, was wearing a set of robes. Said man had a handkerchief to his face as he wiped what were obviously false tears from his eyes. Rikusuka, why are you crying? The man asked through his false tears. Do you not like the beautiful funeral I'm giving you? The man, now known as Rikusuka, continued to scream in terror and plead with the other man. Don't worry, despite your obvious lack of respect, I will always remember you fondly. The other people were finally able to put the man in the coffin and shut the lid before bolting it down with nails. As they brought the coffin over to the now finished grave, the man, which Naruto finally recognized as Raiga Kurosuke, began to make a speech about the person they were giving the funeral to. Naruto listened in disgust as the funeral came to an end. When he was sure the group was gone, Naruto walked over to the grave. Creating several cage bushin, Naruto had them dig the man out. They pulled up the coffin and smashed through the top. Pulling out the man, who was half delirious, Naruto ordered his clones to take him to the Curry of Life shop that he had seen on his way here. He looked over at where Raiga and the others left. Now all he had to do was take care of them. Naruto looked out over the small mining town as he crouched down from atop of a cliff. The town was fairly small, with only a few buildings that Naruto recognized as taverns and shops. The blonde did not see any houses, which led him to assume that the people had houses just outside the town itself. As he studied the layout, Naruto also looked at its people. They were doing severe manual labor as groups of people moved in and out of the mines. The people were surrounded by members of Raiga's gang, which was obvious by the cloaks they were wearing. The blonde counted 8 in all. One of the people, an old man, seemed to be wobbling under the strain of his load and fell down panting. 2 of the cloaked men came up to the old man and began taunting and kicking him, telling him to get back up and work unless he wanted to have Raiga give him a funeral. Deciding enough was enough, Naruto disappeared in a burst of speed, shooting down the cliff and heading for the mining town. Naruto soon came up on the 2 people beating the old man. Without giving them time to react in any way, shape or form, Naruto smashed his fists into the men's heads. As they went flying, Naruto disappeared in another burst of speed, knocking out every cloaked figure that was here. When it was all done, Naruto looked around at the stunned figures of the people in the town. I suggest all of you head home for now, Naruto spoke up in a clear voice that rang across the town. This place is no doubt going to become a battlefield, and I do not wish for any of you to be caught in the crossfire. Please make your way to your homes. The people looked at him like he had grown a second head, before they looked at each other. Not knowing what else to do, they followed Naruto's advice and starting leaving. As they were, another group of thugs appeared running down a hill to Naruto's left-hand side. With a small grunt, Naruto kicked himself off the ground and flew towards the thugs, smashing into them with all the fury of a hurricane. Naruto began to twist and turn as he dodged the pathetic weapons of his enemies, lashing out with his own kicks and punches. The people he was fighting were extremely weak by Shinobi standards and Naruto made quick work of them. Looking around, Naruto frowned when he did not spot Raiga anywhere. He had been hoping that he could lure the man out by taking care of the members of his gang, yet he could not find Raiga anywhere. Little did he know that Raiga was standing on the same cliff he had been before beginning his assault. "Well, I did not expect to find such an adversary in this small town," Raiga said in his insane voice. He turned his head to look at the bag on his back. "Are you ready?" "Hi Raiga-sama, I am ready." Surprisingly, the answer came from the large sack on the man's back. "Good, then let's get started." Naruto frowned as a thick mist came in and his senses began to go haywire, telling him that he was surrounded by enemy shinobi. Closing his eyes, Naruto began to block out all forms of distraction. Reaching out, Naruto tried to gain a sense of the chakra being used for what was obviously some form of illusion. Finally he found what he was looking for up on the cliff that he had been on before he started his assault. Looking towards and focusing chakra to his eyes, he found a cloaked figure with a large bag on his back. Naruto channeled chakra into his legs and took off running towards the cliff. Once he got there, he jumped onto the cliff face and began running up the wall. There was a puff of smoke in his hand as Naruto unsealed Susanoo. He got to the top of the cliff and in a burst of speed jumped at the smirking form of Raiga. Clang! Naruto's blade clashed with Raiga's too in a battle for dominance. The two soon jumped away as they eyed each other. Well, look what we have here," Raiga said with an insane grin. "I have heard many things about you, Namikaze-san." Naruto stayed weary of the man in front who was acting too confident for his liking. "Then you should know that you stand no chance against me." "Hey," Raiga smirked as he got into a low stance with his two swords, "you're more than welcome to think that. You should be prepared to fall by my blade, maybe afterwards I'll even give you a funeral." Naruto said nothing as he held Susanoo in a reverse grip and got into his stance, with his blade held in front and his knees slightly bent. The two stayed that way for a while before a slight breeze rustled through the area, which was when both fighters kicked off and began their kenjutsu match. Their forms were mere blurs as the two clashed blades, disappearing only to reappear again when their swords locked. The battle soon picked up in intensity as the landscape began to change, large cracks appearing where the two met due to the power behind their strikes. When they met again, Raiga tried to disarm Naruto, using the hooks at the end of one of his blades to grab at Susanoo. When the blonde shinobi found out what Raiga was trying to do, he jumped away and made a slashing motion with his sword. A Kaze no Yabe was launched from the tip and shot towards Raiga, who was forced to dodge. Putting his swords above his head in a crossguard, Raiga began to channel lightning into his blade, which soon took the shape of a ball. Raiten, Raikyu. Naruto deftly dodged the attack before making a slicing motion with his sword and sending a Kaze no Yabe to Raiga. Said man merely jumped out of the way. Naruto appeared right in front of him and began kenjutsu match with the swordsman, going in with an alternative mix of low and high strikes aimed at vitals and tendons in the hopes of either killing the man outright or crippling him. None of it seemed to work as Naruto continued his assault. Not only did the man seem to know what he was going to do before he did it, but his two swords also gave him the advantage of more weaponry, nullifying Naruto's advantage in speed. Naruto ducked under a horizontal slash from the man, before bringing up his sword in an attempt to impale Raiga through the stomach. Said swordsman sidestepped the attack and used his left blade to push it out of the way, coming in with his right with a slash to take off Naruto's head. Naruto leaned his head back, letting the attack narrowly miss him. Bringing up his blade in a reverse grip, he blocked Raiga's next slash. Pushing against the blade, Naruto managed to open a hole in his opponent's guard. Switching to a standard grip, Naruto slashed in an upwards diagonal cross that would vivisect Raiga. Said swordsman blocked the attack with one of his blades. Before he could counter, however, Naruto pushed Susanoo off the swordsman's blade and made a downwards diagonal slash. Raiga blocked that with his other blade and made an attempt to slice Naruto in half. Said blonde jumped back before the blade passed through to where he had been. As he charged again, Naruto felt the man channel Raiten chakra into his blades, channeling his own Fuuten chakra. As the two locked blades, the blonde shinobi was able to negate the effects of the man's Raiten chakra. The two began to push against each other in a contest of strength, each vying to push the other off balance. Raiga was the one to eventually slip as Naruto's immense physical prowess proved to be too much. Jumping back, the mad swordsman gained some distance. My, you're quite good. You truly live up to the rumors I've been hearing about you. When I kill you, I will make your funeral my most amazing piece of work, Raiga said with a twisted smile into his face. Naruto paid attention to none of the man's speech of funerals as he studied his opponent, as he tried to analyze his enemy. Raiga was only an A-rank ninja, so he should not be this good. That meant he had some kind of gimmick or something that was giving him an edge in this battle. He eyed the sack that was on the man's back. Raiga had been awfully protective of it. He would bet his fortune from his book Love List that whatever it was that was helping him was in there. Naruto immediately put a plan into action to separate Raiga from whatever was in the bag, throwing several kunai at the man who deftly dodged or blocked them, but that was okay. These kunai were not meant to hit, but rather to hide one of Naruto's Hiraishin kunai. Naruto took one of the frog kenjutsu kata stances as he disappeared in a bright yellow flash and reappeared right next to Raiga. He slashed the bag off the man's back and kicked the man in the stomach, sending him flying to the ground and then knocking him out with a kick to the head. He caught the bag and set it on the ground, frowning at how it felt. The bag had something roughly shaped like a human and was breathing. He undid the bag and opened it up, only to find himself staring into a pair of red eyes. "A child?" Naruto questioned. "You were the one giving Raiga that edge in the battle, weren't you?" The little boy said nothing. Naruto sighed, knowing he wasn't going to get any answers out of the boy, and refused to torture a mere child. He created a kage bushin and began to give it orders: seal Raiga's head in a scroll, burn the body. The clone saluted and was about to go off when a voice stopped him. "No." Naruto looked at the kid again. "Excuse me? Don't kill him. Raiga is all I have in this world. He's the only person to ever want me for something," the boy said, tears running down his eyes. Naruto looked at the kid as he remembered another person who had the same fanatical and loyal devotion to another. It was the person who had told him what it meant to be strong and set him on his path, Haku. He saw the same eyes in this boy that he saw in Haku's almost 4 years ago when he had met him in the clearing during the wave mission. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. "Very well." He turned to his clone: "Seal him in a prisoner transportation scroll. We'll take him to Kiri and ask if he can't be given a pardon." He turned back to the now stunned kid. "Hey kid, what's your name?" Ranmaru," he said. "Well Ranmaru, it's your lucky day, as I happen to be friends with the new Namikaze, so he may just get off being killed. However, both of you will have to come with me so I can give my account to the Namikaze myself." Naruto stood up and lifted the boy on his shoulders. Deciding he didn't want to walk, Naruto sent a pulse of chakra through his seal towards Mace Hiraishin kunai, letting her know he was on his way. "Hey kid, you might want to hang on tight, this is going to get a little disorienting." "Wah?" Ranmaru didn't even get to finish as Naruto and he disappeared in a bright yellow flash. They reappeared nearly a second later. Ranmaru looked around extremely disoriented until he heard a cry of Naruto-kun, and turned his attention to the source. "A beautiful red-haired woman wearing the Namikaze robes," said woman who looked like she was about to tackle the blonde shinobi but stopped when she noticed Ranmaru's presence. "Naruto-kun, who is this?" Mei asked as she looked at Ranmaru with her head slightly tilted to the side. Naruto gave her a smile. "Mayheim, this is Ranmaru." "Ranmaru, this is Mayheim," Naruto said, introducing the two. "Ranmaru is the companion of Raiga Kurosuke," Naruto stated as he watched Mei look at him with interest. "This I need to hear," Mei said with a smirk as she sat down on the couch and gestured for Naruto to take a seat. Setting Ranmaru down on the couch, Naruto took a seat next to Mei, right before he pulled Mei onto his lap and began to explain how he had gotten into a battle with Raiga. Mei wrapped her arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder as she listened with a large smile and rapt attention as Naruto told his tale. She had always found it amusing that the blonde was such a good storyteller. Even more amusing was that, unlike others, she knew the blonde shinobi was actually telling the truth without any serious embellishing, since he was far too modest and found it embarrassing to be considered a hero. As she listened to Naruto finish his story as well as his request, she closed her eyes as she thought about what he was asking. In truth, she was actually pleased to know that it might be possible to get another of the Kiri no Shinobi Gatana Nanan and Shu in her ranks. While the war was over and she had more shinobi than she expected to have, any help she could get to bolster her ranks was appreciated. "I will ask him if he would like to rejoin our forces," Mei said after a moment, much to Ranmaru's joy. "Having another member of the Kiri no Shinobi Gatana Nanan and Shu will greatly help to bolster our ranks, and since Raiga left during Yagura's reign, the man's bounty holds no real value." Naruto turned to the little red-eyed child with a grin. "See kiddo, nothing to worry about." "Anbu," Mei called out. The door opened and in stepped two Anbu officer who ignored the presence of the blonde and red-eyed child as they looked at Mei awaiting her orders. Naruto grinned that the two were not surprised to see him. Naruto had often been seen coming out of the office with Mei without entering, for nearly 2 years, and he had given more than half of the Anbu heart attacks every time he would arrive in here. It was good to see they were learning. I would like you to find someone to give Ranmaru here a tour of Kiri, Mei said, gesturing to Ranmaru. When you're finished, make sure he is taken to my house. I'll have him stay there while we wait for Raiga's decision on whether or not he will join us. Also, someone will need to carry him since he cannot walk on his own. The Anbu nodded, though Naruto could sense they were surprised about Raiga. One of them picked up the child while the other was handed the scroll that had Raiga in it. Also, Mei continued, I want you to check in with some of the doctors to see if any of them are capable of healing Ranmaru's legs. The Anbu nodded and left, closing the door after them. As soon as the two of them were alone, Mei pulled Naruto into a heated kiss. Having expected this, Naruto returned the kiss and began to gently nibble on Mei's bottom lip. When the busty red-haired Kage opened her mouth to let out a low moan, Naruto slipped his tongue into her mouth. The two soon began a small duel with their tongues entwining each other, trying to get the upper hand. Naruto decided to submit to Mei and retracted his tongue to grant her access. Mei eagerly began to explore every crevice of his mouth, enjoying the sweet taste Naruto had. Mei pushed Naruto down onto the couch so he was laying down as she straddled his waist, still kissing him as her hands began to run through Naruto's sun-kissed hair. Naruto likewise had wrapped one arm around her waist as the other began to gently massage and fondle Mei's firm butt. It was about half an hour later that they stopped their small makeout session. Mei smiled as she closed her eyes, giving a content sigh as her head rested on Naruto's chest. Even though it had only been around 2 weeks since she had last seen him, she still missed him. The blonde always managed to keep things from being boring and was able to light up her day just by being with her. Koishi? Naruto asked, causing Mei to smile at one of his frequently used suffixes. Yes, koibito? Mei responded. Are you done with your paperwork for the day? Mei raised her head to look at Naruto and saw the small glint in his eyes, causing her to smirk. Naruto and Mei smiled and waved to another group of villagers they passed as they walked arm in arm around the village. They had no clear destination in mind and just kept on the move while enjoying each other's company. It was something they had done often when Naruto was around, simply walking around Kiri or whatever town Naruto summoned Mei to and walked around until something caught their fancy. Eventually the couple settled down at a small stand, with Naruto deciding to go with some beef ramen and Mei ordering a miso ramen. As the two waited for their meal, they discussed some of the new things going on in their life. Mei told him about the new batch of shinobi that just got out of the academy sometime last week. She hoped to have them ready for the Chunin exam next year and was having them trained by some of her more talented jonin. Naruto told her about some of his travels, leaving out his stint at saving Gaara. Not that he didn't want to tell her, but with so many people around he did not feel comfortable talking about it here. You know, I almost wish I could just go wherever I want now that I'm stuck to my desk, Mei said in a teasing voice as she gave him a pout. Naruto affected a mock-hurt expression as he made a few sniffling noises. I thought you got to do that already, or is spending time with your fiancé outside of Kiri not good enough for you? That was another thing that had happened. After Naruto had made that movie with Koyuki, he had officially proposed to both Mei and Yugito. Well, he had after he made it up to them. When the two had heard that their Naruto had been in a porno, they had been downright furious. Thankfully Naruto had made sure Jiraiya sent that letter, which Naruto had changed the contents of, making it sound like the perverted sage had blackmailed him. Which had not only gotten Jiraiya beaten but also had his testes melted by Mei's yotan when Naruto had summoned them via Hiraishin. Naruto shook his head. Jiraiya had to be used to taking a shitload of punishment to still be able to use his package after something like that. That was not to say Naruto had been let off the hook. It had taken Naruto spending an entire week with Mei as something of a personal slave to get her to forgive him. Though Naruto would not call what she did punishment, he would often take her out to eat or make her food or just treat her like a goddess anyways, so it was no different than what they usually did. Mei had also made him give her a full body massage. Of course that was anything but punishment for the blonde. Though there was also the time when she had taken Naruto shopping, which he really did not mind doing things like this for her. Unlike others of the male gender, he would often do the same thing for Koyuki, Yugito, and Konan. He remembered that this time Mei had gotten a devious streak and had come out of the changing room one time in nothing but lacy blue lingerie. Naruto remembered the way the light blue cloth had not only hugged her curves but had been slightly see-through, making it give you enough of a view to tantalize you and make you want more, but not enough to see everything. Naruto had been blown out of the store by a nosebleed so large he had gone through the store wall and blacked out. Sigh, good times. Mei smacked his shoulder in a playful gesture, snapping him out of his thoughts. You know what I mean. Naruto nodded sagely. All that paperwork. He looked at her with a mischievous grin. You could do what Bachan does and just drink yourself stupid until you forget about it. Mei laughed as Naruto started telling her stories of when he would find the Hokage whom he called Tsunade Bachan getting so drunk that she would oftentimes fall asleep at her desk, only to get scolded by her assistant the next morning. Add on to that fact that Naruto would call one of the legendary three Sannin and the one most known for her super strength and violent temper Bachan merely added on to the humor. When their food came, the two quieted down to eat, keeping a comfortable silence until they finished. Afterwards the two walked out as Mei held one of Naruto's arms in both of hers, pressing it into the valley of her breast much to the jealousy of both males who wanted Mei and females who desired to have Naruto. As they walked around, Mei looked over at a store where she apparently saw something that caught her attention and began to drag Naruto into it, said Blonde, just grinning at Mei's enthusiasm. It was 4 orgasms and in several hours later that the two dropped onto the bed, Naruto flopping onto his back as Mei laid in between his legs while still connected to the blonde Uzumaki Namikaze air. Wrapping her arms around Naruto's broad chest, Mei let out an utterly exhausted yet content sigh, the afterglow from the sex still having not faded and probably would not for some time. Naruto wrapped one arm around Mei's waist as the other began to caress and massage Mei's firm butt. That feels good. Just what you need after several hours session of hot passionate sex, nee? Asked Naruto with a quiet chuckle. Mei murmured as she kissed his chest. Do you think you could continue doing this until I fall asleep? Of course, Naruto said as he added a small amount of chakra. Mei smiled as she let out a soft sigh, eventually succumbing to exhaustion. Naruto stayed awake a little longer as he brought the blanket over their nude forms, kissing her on the head. The blonde shinobi let out a deep breath as he smiled. Closing his eyes, he let himself fall into a dreamless sleep. The next day Naruto and Mei were walking around town later in the afternoon, with the Mizukage having a rather noticeable limp. It seemed they had gone at it so hard last night that Mei had actually been unable to get out of bed this morning. For a while it had been rather funny to watch her try and get up only to fall face down again. Of course then she started cursing him out for laughing at her and promised to melt him if he did this again, which they both knew this would happen again just like it did the first time when she said the same thing. They ignored the stares as they made their way to the Mizukage tower, giving a greeting to her assistant in the onbu at the door to her office. Making their way inside, Mei went over to her desk and sat down, sighing as she noticed the pile of paperwork that had seemingly grown anew overnight. Naruto walked behind her and began to give her shoulders a gentle massage. Mei looked up at him and smiled before grabbing the first sheet of her paperwork and began to read. Jiraiya didn't even bat an eyelash as Naruto appeared right next to him in a yellow flash. Having grown used to it over the past few years, the Sennin merely looked at his student. You took a little longer than expected for a simple rank ninja, Jiraiya stated as he looked at his student with a small hint of suspicion in his eyes. Jiraiya had just received a letter from Tsunade, telling him about someone who came to help Gaara when he was attacked by the Akatsuki. Naruto merely shrugged. He had this one kid who seemed to have a bloodline that allowed him to see everything like the Byakugan. It made him a lot harder to hit. Besides, I decided to spend some time with Mei-chan. While it was not a lie, it wasn't the whole truth either. He did not want it getting out that he helped kill 2 members of the Akatsuki yet. While the blonde had no doubt that it would happen eventually, Naruto had no desire to have Akatsuki begin to feel he was a threat. This would also hopefully keep them guessing about who this new enemy was. Jiraiya's narrowed eyes soon gave way Naruto a lecherous grin as he completely forgot about Tsunade's letter. Ho ho, so you were hanging out with a hot redhead this time. I can't say I blame you, she's Uro-sensei. If I hear you make a perverted comment about her or the other girls, I am going to Rasen Shuriken your ass back to the time of the Rikudo Sennin. Jiraiya closed his mouth, though his grin remained in place as the two continued to walk down the dirt road. We have about 5 months left until you return to Konoha, Jiraiya said after a few moments. I don't believe there is anything more I can teach you within that time frame. Jiraiya looked at Naruto with a proud smile. I want you to know I'm proud of you, you've really come a long way. Naruto looked at his sensei and smiled, despite the arguments they would get into, most of which were when he made a perverted comment about Naruto and one of his girls. The man was still the closest thing to a father he had. Thanks, Jiraiya-sensei, Naruto replied. This is the only time that you're going to call me that, isn't it? Jiraiya deadpanned. Naruto's smile turned into a grin. Of course is it. The rest of the way to their destination, Jiraiya cried anime tears as he complained about not getting enough respect. Naruto opened his eyes when he felt something stir in his arms. Blinking a few times to adjust to the light, the blonde looked down and found a smile work its way on his face. Konan was lying on his chest sleeping peacefully, a content smile showing on her face as she tried to burrow her way deeper into his muscles. He gently rolled the blue-haired woman off of him and leaned on his side as he looked down at her face. Reaching out with a hand, Naruto brushed away a few strands of Konan's hair as his knuckles caressed her cheeks. Leaning down, Naruto pressed his lips to hers in a light kiss, which seemed to wake up Konan as she began to stir. Opening her eyes, Konan smiled as she saw a pair of familiar blue eyes looking at her. The blue-haired woman wrapped her arms around Naruto's neck, bringing his head in down for another lip lock. "I hope you plan on waking me up this way every time we sleep together," Konan mumbled with half-lidded eyes and a coy smile. Naruto grinned at her as he went in for another kiss. "When you're ready, I'll wake you up in far better ways than this." In emphasis, Naruto let his hands ghost across her chest, lightly touching her nipples, which could be felt through the fabric of her shirt since she never wore a bra to bed. Konan gave a soft moan at his touch before Naruto brought his hand back up to her face, cupping and caressing her cheek with his thumb. Even though she had slept with Naruto many times since they became an official couple, Konan had asked Naruto that they wait to go any further, and so they had not done anything other than some heavy petting. Naruto knew this was Konan's first relationship. Because of that, she wanted to take things slow, to find out more about him and more about herself after having finally been given the chance to do so. It was something Naruto could understand and in truth had no problem doing. I'll be looking forward to that time," Konan told him with a small smile on her face. "What time is Jiraiya-sensei going to be here?" "Not for another few hours," Naruto replied as he lay down on his side and pulled Konan to him. Jiraiya had gone out to have a last-second meeting with someone in his spy network, before he and Naruto left for Konoha. Since Naruto was not sure how long it would be before he could spend any real time with Konan or the others, he had taken to spending a full day with each of them. Yesterday had been Konan's day, and the two had spent most of their time at an area that had 4 waterfalls which combined into one large waterfall with dozens of little pools at the bottom. The place was called Taki no Kesso, and they had gone there for a picnic before just cuddling together under the stars. After hearing that she still had a few hours with Naruto, Konan gave a grin that was almost similar to the blonde's as she rolled them over so she was straddling his waist. "Since Jiraiya-sensei is not going to be here for a while, what do you want to do?" she asked with small, almost imperceptible smirk. Naruto smiled as brought his lips to meet hers. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yugito let out a tired huff as she continued to run. She was not sure how long she had been running. It could have been hours or even days, the only that she knew was that she needed to keep moving. Her clothing was currently ruined, the purple armor piece she wore was gone, having been destroyed during her recent battle. Her shirt was ripped in several places, revealing her stomach and parts of her bra. Her pants were destroyed, having been turned into shorts, with several large gashes running along the sides. Some of her wounds were still bleeding, having not had the chance to heal with the amount of chakra she had used in her battle. The blonde Kumajonin had just been returning from a mission when she had been attacked by 2 men wearing black cloaks with red clouds on them. Akatsuki. She was not quite sure just how they had managed to locate her, but she supposed it didn't matter. They had found her and demanded that she come with them. Knowing who they were and what they wanted, she had refused, and the two had proceeded to try and capture her. After her first battle with them, she had realized that she was at a serious disadvantage when fighting them out in the open. Knowing this, she had created a distraction and ran. Currently she was in a sewer system deep below a village several miles off the border to Kaminari no Kuni. It was her hope that she could get them in an enclosed space and trap them there. If she could do that, she was sure that she could take them out by playing to her strengths, but she knew not to underestimate the two. She had done that before when they first caught her, even knowing what group they belonged to. That had nearly cost her her life. The two were not only strange looking, but were also vastly more powerful than the average shinobi, with an odd mix of techniques she had never seen and powers she did not know existed. One of them was a tan-skinned man with a bandana like Hideo 8, it had a waterfall symbol with a slash mark through it showing he was a missing ninja from Takigakour. His irises were a greenish color and pupil-less, while the rest of the eyes were red. He wore a black mask, leaving everything covered except his cheeks and eyes visible. The thing that got to her, however, were the 4 masks the man had on his back. If that was not odd enough, then the fact that those masks could detach themselves and fight independently certainly was. Not only that, but it appeared that each mask was linked to a specific element, and the man would often combine 2 elements into a collaboration jutsu of some kind, making the fight not only 6-on-1 but also 12 times harder. The other person she was faced with was even weirder, despite being the more normal-looking of the two. He had slicked back white hair with purple eyes, while he held a 3-bladed scythe in one of his hands. Despite this seemingly normal look, she had found out the man was anything but. When she had first attacked him, he had been severely injured, with Yugito managing to puncture one of his lungs with her signature Keizuki assassination attack. Despite that injury, nothing had happened except for him to start cursing her out about how he was going to sacrifice her to Jashin. Apparently he had gained some form of immortality by becoming a zealot for a religion known as Jashinism. While Yugito had not quite believed what he had said, his religion was later proven to be much more than she had first thought. After making some kind of weird occult symbol on the ground, the man had proceeded to ingest her blood, which he had gotten with a lucky hit. As soon as he did, the man's entire appearance had changed. His skin turned black with a white exoskeleton over it. He had then used the scythe he had been carrying to impale himself through the leg, and somehow, much to the blonde woman's shock, that same injury appeared on her own leg. It wasn't hard for her to figure out that anyone whose blood he'd ingested became injured when he injured himself, so long as he was in the middle of that symbol. Knowing this, Yugito had used Nibi's chakra and blasted the man out of the symbol, before ruining it and running. It was then she had headed into a village she recognized from the few times she had been there, and then headed straight for the sewers. Just a little bit further, she thought as she ran into an open room. Just as Yugito reached her destination, instincts kicked in, causing her to duck just as a large scythe passed through where she had been standing. Spinning around, she looked over to see the two that had been chasing her walking in, the scythe being yanked back into the white-haired man's hands. "That was pretty good of you to dodge, Nico-chan," he said with a grin, "though I am the slowest member of Akatsuki." "Careful, Hidan," said the one with the mask in a gravelly voice, "she might kill you, if you're not careful." Hidan merely smirked. "PFT, you know that's not possible. If she could kill me, I'd let her." Yugito took several deep breaths as she slowed her heart rate. "I'm going to make you regret underestimating me." She reached into her pouch and pulled out one of her kunai, which had an explosive note attached to it. At the same time, she felt a ring on her finger shift as it pressed against the fabric of her pouch. She recognized it as the proposal ring that Naruto had given to her about a month after the blonde had spent a week with her, to make up for being in the Icha Icha movie. Like Maze, it also had the seals on the underside, so that she could use it to call him when she needed him and never lose it. She personally did not want to get Naruto involved in this and possibly get hurt, but she knew he would not only be pissed if she did not call him, but that he was also more powerful than her. Besides that, she had promised Naruto that she would call him if she ever ran into Akatsuki. "Now I'm gonna show you why I'm the second strongest ninja in Kumo." Yugito threw a kunai at the gate behind them. The sharp sizzling sound was the only warning as the kunai exploded, causing the gate to collapse and the way out to be sealed shut. When the two were distracted by the explosion, she channeled some chakra into her ring, sending a single pulse to let Naruto know she needed him. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto stopped as he and Jiraiya were walking to their next destination. Jiraiya walked along for a little ways before noticing his student had stopped and was staring into space. Stopping as well, Jiraiya turned to look at him. "Naruto, is there a problem?" Naruto looked at his sensei. "One of my Hiraishin seals went off, the one with Yugito." "I'll see you later, sensei." Naruto disappeared in a yellow flash before Jiraiya could even speak. Just like his father, Jiraiya mused as he continued on his journey. XXXXXXXXXXXXX Kaiten, Zukoku. Several compressed fireballs shot out of the mouth of the mask Yugito had come to recognize as the Fire One. The fireballs soon turned into a large firestorm that enveloped the area in front of her. Fuuten, Atsugi. A large maelstrom of pressurized wind was launched out of another mask, catching up to the flame and increasing its size and power. Yugito was just about to jump out of the way when a figure appeared right in front of her. The blonde woman smiled as she recognized the familiar mop of spiky blonde hair. Sujin Heki. As Naruto spread his arms out in front of him, a giant wall of water began forming from the moisture in the air. In less than a second, he and Yugito were surrounded by water as the collaboration jutsu smashed into the protective shield. There was a hiss of steam as the two jutsu clashed, the fire jutsu trying and failing to overpower Naruto's water wall. When the fire was completely put out, Naruto pointed a finger at the two cloaked Akatsuki members. Suten, Dabakufu no Jutsu. The wall of water soon swirled around in a vortex before it launched itself at Kakazu and Hidan. The two jumped out of the way as the water drilled straight through the cement they were standing on. "And you told me to be careful," Naruto said with a smirk as he turned his head to look at Yugito. "Yet here you are picking a fight with Akatsuki. Really now, Yugi-chan, how hypocritical of you. It's not like I went out of my way to find them." Yugito mumbled in embarrassment about her own words being turned on her. "Besides, I called you, didn't I?" "True, and I'm gonna have to find some way to thank you, as I was just getting bored from not having a challenge." Naruto grinned at her. "So how would you like to go on a date later tonight, and then maybe afterwards we can take a nice trip to a communal hot springs?" "That sounds nice," Yugito said with a small blush. "Oi. The two turned to Hidan, who had just interrupted their banter. "Who the fuck do you think you are, you prick?" Hidan yelled as he pointed at Naruto with his scythe. Said blonde blinked as an owlish expression came to his face and he pointed at himself. "Yes, you. I'm gonna sacrifice you to Jashin for interrupting me, you stupid fuck." "My, this guy's got a mouth on him," Naruto mumbled. "Which one do you want, Yugi-chan?" the blonde male asked as he turned to his fellow blonde. "I'll take the loud one," Yugito said with a smirk as she began channeling Nibi's chakra. Soon a dark purple cloak covered her frame, shaped like a cat with two swishing tails behind her. "You can have the other one, be careful, those masks of his can detach and launch jutsu at you." Naruto nodded in acknowledgement as he put on his shinobi face. Raising a hand he pointed it at Kakazu. "Raiten, Byakurai." A giant bolt of lightning shot out of Naruto's finger and charged towards Kakazu. One of Kakazu's masks came out of his back and to his aid as it opened his mouth. "Raiten, John." A large bolt of lightning shot at Naruto's jutsu, crashing into it as the two began to vie for power. Naruto pushed more chakra into his jutsu and overpowered Kakazu's. There was a large explosion of electricity. As the blonde's jutsu plowed through the Raiten, John and charged onto Kakazu, said man was forced to jump out of the way only to find Naruto right in his face. The greedy member of Akatsuki tilted his head to the side to dodge the fist. At the same time his skin began to darken and harden as he grabbed onto the blonde's arm, pulling Naruto into a punch. Only for said blonde to disappear in a puff of smoke as another Naruto came at him from the ground with the Rasengan in hand. Kakazu jumped back as he dodged the Rasengan and sent out several tendrils to impale the blonde. Once again there was a puff of smoke signifying a Kage Bushin being used. "I see," Kakazu said as he turned around to see Naruto standing a little ways behind him. "Your description matches that of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. I see the rumors about your battle prowess are true." As Naruto smirked, Kakazu pulled out what Naruto recognized as a bingo book and began to flip through it. "You have a 500,000 yen bounty on your head, quite impressive for someone who only gained fame recently. After Akatsuki extracts your Baiju, I will be able to make a nice bounty off your corpse." "You're more than welcome to try," Naruto said as he got into his fighting stance, "but neither you nor Akatsuki will get what you want from me." "We will see," Kakazu said as all four masks emerged from his back. Two of them came at Naruto. Said blonde jumped out of the way just as one shot a blast of fire at him. When Naruto jumped out of the way, another mask shot a ball of wind at the fire, blowing into Naruto's path and strengthening the flames. The blonde shinobi's mouth bulged with water, as he thought his jutsu. Suten, Kyoden. A strong jet stream of water was shot out of Naruto's mouth and headed for the flames, dousing them with a hiss of steam as Naruto landed on the ground. As soon as he did, the blonde was forced to dodge a blast of lightning that came at him from behind. Flipping himself around, Naruto made a slicing motion and launched a Kaze no Yaiba at the lightning mask. Before the wind blade could cut through the mask, the fire mask appeared in front of Naruto's jutsu and launched a stream of fire at it. The wind was soon reduced to nothing as the fire overtook it and headed for Naruto, who jumped out of the way and held out his hand. Suten, Saryudan no Jutsu. A large dragon made of water coalesced into existence besides Naruto and crashed against the powerful flame, overpowering it and heading for the fire mask, which jumped out of the way. Naruto turned around just as the lightning mask shot a blast of lightning at him. Raiten, Byakurai. Naruto launched another lightning bolt from his fingers, slicing through his opponent's lightning bolt. Landing on the ground, Naruto was forced to continue dodging jutsu and launching counter jutsu, finding that he was not gaining any ground against his opponent. The blonde cursed as he continued to find himself being forced to react defensively and never get in a solid advantage. Whenever he managed to get the upper hand on one of the masks, one of the others would come to back it up. As another Fuuten, Kaiten collaboration jutsu headed for him, Naruto decided it was time to change the playing field. Suten, Bakasui Shoha. A large amount of water burst out of nowhere and covered the entire area, dousing the flames and forcing Kakazu to jump on the water. As soon as he did, Naruto was there aiming a punch at the man's face. Kakazu hardened his skin again as he grabbed the fist and pulled the blonde into a knee. Naruto jumped up and over the knee as well as the rest of the bounty hunter, forcing Kakazu to let go. Naruto came back down with an axe kick, only for Kakazu to sidestep the attack and smash a foot into Naruto's face. Naruto puffed out of existence and Kakazu only had enough time to turn around as Naruto smashed a palm strike into his solar plexus and sending the man flying. The blonde had no time to celebrate his hit as one of the masks launched a blast of lightning at Naruto. Said blonde began to spin as he covered himself in a protective layer of chakra as he called upon his elements. Soon a mixture of wind and water swirled around him in a tornado-like fashion. When the lightning hit, it was merely absorbed and combined with the other two elements. The swirling wind, water and lightning started to change into a black mass with electricity as several thousand wind blades occasionally flying out while water swirled around him in a whirlpool-like fashion. The entire spectacle looked like something akin to a miniature hurricane contained in a ball. Naruto grit his teeth as he continued his spin, combining and controlling the three elements within his vortex. This was the culmination of all of Naruto's years of trying to combine his elements. For a long time the blonde had imagined combining all three elements into a single attack. It had only been about a week since he had been able to create his first ever combination of his three main elements, managing to create a storm cloud by gathering his elements into the palm of his hand and compressing it into a super dense matter. The ability to do this was ridiculously difficult to control, requiring him to split his attention between the three different elements until they merged, but the power behind any of the jutsu Naruto planned on making would be unlike anything ever imagined. Suddenly Naruto shot up into the air as the speed of the storm swirling around him began to increase. Suddenly it stopped, and for a moment it seemed as if everything around Naruto had become frozen in time. Right until several thousand dark storm clouds filled with lightning, cutting winds and large cannonball-sized water drills and hailstones were launched everywhere around him with all the fury of a raging tempest. Two of Kakazu's masks were completely annihilated. The lightning mask and fire mask were unable to get out of the way in time and suffered what almost seemed to be the wrath of an angry god, as the maelstrom of power tore into them. In the center of this power blast was Naruto, who had his arms and legs splayed out, using his chakra to fuel the raging storm. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Yugito dodged another reckless swing from her opponent as she tried to find a way around Hidan's guard. However, despite the man's style being completely reckless and having no form whatsoever, it was also too unpredictable and therefore impossible for the blonde woman to find a way around. Yugito was forced to jump over a horizontal slash from her opponent. Landing on the ground, she went through several hand seals and slammed her hands on the ground. Raiten, Ikazuchi Hikai. Yugito sent an enormous bolt of lightning which tore through the ground towards Hidan. Said immortal jumped out of the way. As soon as he did, Yugito jumped into the air and tried to claw swipe him. Hidan swung his scythe and impaled her, only for Yugito to explode in a shower of electricity. Fuck. Hidan cursed as he landed on the ground, shaking as sparks of lightning ran through his system. Keizuki. Hidan managed to recover and jumped back as Yugito slammed into the ground where he had been, creating a large explosion from the fire jutsu she had created. Yugito jumped away as Hidan tried to close in on her, once again swinging his scythe, ducking under a slash before she was kicked in the face. Yugito flipped through the air as she went with the blow, landing on her feet a few meters away as she began going through more hand signs. Raiten, Ryuden. A large midnight blue dragon made of lightning coiled around Yugito's form, lightning sparking off of it as its purple eyes glared balefully at Hidan. With a loud roar, it launched itself at the Jashinist, who jumped back. Yugito did a few hand signs and the dragon changed directions and charged at him again. Hidan was forced to run and dodge as the dragon continued following him. He looked over at Yugito to see her holding a hand sign and realized what was happening. As he ran, he closed in on Yugito's still form and threw his scythe at her, forcing the woman to lose her concentration as she jumped out of the way. The giant dragon lost control and smashed into the ground, exploding in a powerful display of electric sparks while creating a large crater. "That's some technique you got there, Nico-chan," Hidan said with a whistle as he looked at the large crater. "Who knows, that might have actually hurt me." Yugito growled as another of her attempts to kill the man failed. She couldn't understand why she was not able to kill this man. Her thoughts were cut off as Hidan threw his scythe again, forcing her to dodge as she rolled to the left. As she came up, she jumped into the air just as the scythe came back in an attempt to slice her in two. Hidan grinned at her while she was airborne and threw it again. Yugito's eyes widened as the scythe sliced right through her, only for her to disperse into lightning. Hidan was forced to let go of his scythe as the lightning channeled through it and shocked him. Keizuki. Yugito's flame-covered hand tore right through Hidan's chest, right where his heart would be, sending blood and fire everywhere as the man gave a grunt. "You fucking bitch," Hidan yelled as he turned his head to glare at her. "I'm gonna fucking sacrifice your ass to Jashin now, fucking cunt." The Jashin zealot spun around with enough force that Yugito was picked up off her feet and thrown through the air. Flipping around, she channeled chakra to her feet as she landed on the wall. Looking up, she had just enough time to dodge Hidan's slash as his scythe came down, ripping through the spot she had been standing on. Yugito found herself completely on the defensive as she continued to dodge the white-haired man's mad attacks, ducking, sidestepping and twisting her body every which way in a desperate attempt to not get cut. Reaching into her pocket as she continued to weave through Hidan's attacks, Yugito pulled out an explosive note, putting it on the scythe as it made another pass that managed to cut off some of her hair. Creating a single hand sign, the young woman charged some chakra into the tag, jumping back just as it exploded and allowed her some breathing room. "Nibi, I'm going to need your help with this." "How are we going to do this then, kitten?" "I'm thinking full transformation." "Okay then, kick his ass." As Hidan got up and tried to find his scythe, which had gotten thrown into a wall, Yugito once again became surrounded by dark purple chakra. Going down on all fours, making the blonde kunoichi look like a human cat, before she began to change. The chakra began to coalesce around Yugito, forming into the shape of a cat as it started to grow, getting larger and larger until Yugito was the size of a 4-story house. Ghost-like flames moved and shifted on the giant cat's skin, making it look similar to a ghost as yellow eyes glared down at Hidan. Said man whistled as it looked at Yugito, "That's one big kitty." Yugito reared up her paw and smashed it down onto where the man was standing. Hidan jumped back just in time to dodge and threw his scythe at the now nibified Yugito. Said woman opened up her mouth and launched a black ball of chakra at the scythe, sending it off course. Pulling back on the wire, Hidan recalled his scythe to him again. Jumping back as another ball of chakra destroyed the area he was on, Hidan hid behind a large boulder that had fallen from the ceiling sometime during the fight. Hidan tried to come up with a way to fight a giant two-tailed cat but only came up with a blank. Kakazu was usually the strategist of the two. It was unfortunate he was fighting that blonde prick. Just as Hidan was about to run out with his scythe swinging like he usually did, there was a large explosion where Kakazu was having his battle. Blasts of lightning, wind blades, water drills and hailstones charged over the land and destroyed much of the area. Looking out from behind the rock, Hidan saw the cat had looked in the direction of the blast. Being smart enough to realize he might not get another chance, the Jashinist charged out from the behind the rock and threw his scythe. Yugito roared as she felt a sharp pain in her front leg. Looking down, she saw that it had a large cut in it, though it was almost healed. She looked over to find the source and felt her eyes widen. Hidan had obviously cut her and was almost done with the ritual. She ran towards Hidan in the hopes of messing up his ritual, but it was too late. Hidan managed to ingest the blood. He soon changed into his ritual form. His skin turned purple and he had a white exoskeleton showing on the outside, as his rises turned black while the sclera turned purple. Just as Yugito was about to shove him out of the pentagon seal, Hidan stabbed himself right in the stomach, causing Yugito to roar out in pain as she fell to the ground and began to skid across it. Yugito's form began to shift back to her original state as she curled around her stomach, which despite Nibi trying to heal was bleeding profusely. She saw Hidan coming over to her as the blood loss started to get to her. As the man's feet came to a stop in front of her, the woman's eyes fluttered closed. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was breathing heavily as he landed on one knee. That technique took far too much chakra than it should have. Of course, it was the first time he had used it in battle, so that was to be expected. He would have to work on it when he got home. Getting up, he noticed Kakazu pushing some debris off of himself and cursed. Naruto had hoped that attack would have taken the man out. Checking his reserves, Naruto realized he was nearing empty, which left only one option. XXXXXXXXXXXX flashback. Naruto struggled to hold his form as he fought against Kirabai, who had his 8-tailed Cloak. The two continued to trade blows with neither really getting the upper hand. Despite it being fairly hard to keep control, Naruto felt he was doing pretty good, right up until the point where he was sent flying from a powerful kick as B screamed out lariat. Landing on the ground several feet away, Naruto's form was cancelled as he ran out of juice. Yugito came to his side and helped him sit up as Killer B walked over to him. "It looks like 4 tails are as far as you go. You're gonna have to work on that, yo." Naruto saw Yugito eyebrow twitch but was thankful that she did not get violent right now. "I understand, so I'll just have to use this pretty much as a make it or break it jutsu then." "Still, you did pretty well," Yugito complimented with a smile. "It took me years to get up to 2 tails with Nibi, and you're up to 4 in less than 6 months, so I'm sure you'll get it sooner or later." Naruto grinned. "Thanks, Yugi-chan." Flashback end. XXXXXXXXXXXX. "Hey QB, I need some of your chakra to deal with these guys." He heard a humph in his mind. "I can see that, Ningen." "Very well, so long as you do not make me look like a fool, I will lend you my power." Naruto sighed as he felt QB's chakra start to course through him and was about to start bringing out more when a voice called out. "Oi! Kakazu, I got that bitch we're after." Naruto looked over and saw Hidan carrying an unconscious and bleeding Yugito slung over his shoulder. The blonde shinobi felt his eyes widen right before they narrowed in anger. Red chakra began to bubble up from Naruto's skin as he started to let his anger get to him, bringing out more of the Kyuubi's chakra than he had intended. Pretty soon it began to blast out of him in an uncontrolled manner, lashing out at the ground and tearing huge gouges on the surface. Naruto's breathing got heavier as his whiskers began to thicken, while his nails turned into claws and his eye went from blue to red with black slits running down the middle. Just as Naruto was about to lose complete control when his enhanced senses picked up a faint pulse from Yugito. Pausing, he channeled more of Kyuubi's chakra to his ears and confirmed the pulse. Realizing that the woman was not dead, the blonde was able to calm down. Remembering what happened last time, he lost control, and knowing if he did he could very well kill Yugito as well as the other two. Once he felt less anger, he began to channel and control Kyuubi's chakra like he was taught to do. Naruto created a small layer of his own chakra as Kyuubi's began to lay over him like a second skin and covered his entire form from view. Unfortunately, he had used most of his chakra in the battle already, so he would not be able to maintain the form for long. But hopefully it would be enough. The vile chakra soon began to take the shape of a fox, looking more like skin than the standard Baijuo cloak. Behind him were 6 fox-like tails flailing about in an agitated manner, almost as if they had a mind of their own. Naruto's eyes were now completely white and he had a row of sharp-looking fangs and a large fox-like exoskeleton covering his frame. All in all, he now looked like a fox with its muscles and bones showing. Before either of the two could even so much as move, Naruto appeared in front of Hidan and sent him flying back with a crushing punch to the solar plexus, causing the man to fly back as he let go of Yugito. Naruto appeared right under her as she came down. The red chakra pulled back from his hands and arms as he caught the unconscious Yugito. Disappearing again, he repapered and set her down on the far side of the room, creating Kage Bushin to watch over her before he disappeared again. Hidan felt his eyes widen as Naruto appeared right in front of him and speared him with his claws in the 6 tails behind him, channeling as much of Kyuubi's chakra as he could. Naruto watched in satisfaction as the man's skin, blood, bones and muscle began to literally dissolve with a hiss of steam. It was well known that a Baijuo's chakra was like a deadly poison to humans who have not been acclimated to it. However, what was not as well known was that Kyuubi's chakra, being the strongest, was almost like an acid to humans, and if a concentrated enough dose was injected into them, would literally destroy a person's body. The blonde paid no attention as Hidan screamed and cursed him. When the man was nothing more than a head with a few bones, Naruto took 2 tails and impaled it through Hidan's eyes and out of the back of his head. With a strong tug, the tail split the head in 2 before the rest of the tail speared them again, making sure Hidan would never be able to return. Naruto jumped as a blast of water was shot at him. Looking over at the water mask, Naruto thrust his hand forward as a large red chakra claw shot out. The mask could not be recalled in time as Naruto's chakra claw grabbed it. The mask was dragged towards Naruto. As soon as it got in range, Naruto impaled the thing through the mask with his tails, cracking the mask as he lifted it up before tossing it away like a rag doll. He looked over at Kakazu before the 6 tails came in front of him and began to gather chakra. Kakazu, not realizing what it was but knowing it couldn't be good, sent out the last mask he had to try and stop the Kyuubified Naruto. It was too late as Naruto swallowed the compressed ball of chakra. As soon as he did, the ground began to crack from the sheer density of the chakra that now weighed Naruto down. Rakabiko Amari. The wind mask that Kakazu had sent was utterly obliterated as a large cylinder of destructive chakra shot from Naruto's mouth. Kakazu just barely managed to jump out of the way. The moment he jumped into the air, however, Naruto had appeared behind him. Kakazu felt a sharp pain all over his body as Naruto's tails and claws pierced him from behind. With a roar, Naruto ripped Kakazu's body into chunks, tossing the pieces off of his tails before the red chakra around the blonde began to recede. Naruto dropped to his knees as he started to breath heavily, using that much of Kyuubi's chakra still took a toll on him and left the blonde exhausted afterwards. He looked up over at Yugito's prone form on the other side of the room. With a groan, Naruto stood up and began to walk over to her. Once he got to her, he dropped into a sitting position, pulling a sealing scroll filled with medical supplies out of his kunai pouch. Unrolling it, Naruto unsealed his medical equipment. Wrapping his arms just under Yugito's chest, he gently pulled the upper half of her body onto his lap. Channeling a little bit of Fuuten chakra to his fingers, Naruto created a wind blade that he used to cut Yugito's blood-covered shirt, which was still intact since the damage had been a reflection that had been caused by Hidan's Junjutsu. He took it off so he could get to her wound. When he did, Naruto winced. The wound was 3 holes, each one was about 3 inches in diameter and had pierced all the way through Yugito's stomach. Naruto could see his own legs as it came out of the other side through her back. Had Yugito not been a Jinchuriki, this injury would have no doubt killed her. As he looked, Naruto could see Nibi trying to heal the wounds but feared that the giant cat would not be able to heal a wound this massive before the woman died of blood loss. Naruto quickly grabbed his disinfectant and put it on one of the medical cloths. He began to dab the cloth against the torn skin, watching as the alcohol bubbled and burned away anything harmful that may have been in the wound, such as poison or dirt, to help Nibi hasten the healing process. After Naruto watched in satisfaction as the wound began to heal a little faster, a sign that there were several forms of bacteria that had forced Nibi to divert some chakra to destroying whatever was in the dirt. Grabbing the tube for his medical cream and a large amount of bandages, Naruto began to apply them to the young woman's torso. Since Yugito was a Jinchuriki, Naruto dumped an entire bottle of his healing ointment on the bandages rather than a small dose to hopefully help Nibi hasten the healing. The blonde shinobi put a hand to the neck and checked for a pulse. Noticing it was dangerously slow, he began to double the pace of his work. "Come on Yugito, you have to pull through this for me," Naruto mumbled, unaware that several tears had leaked out of the corner of his eyes as he worked. If she did not make it through this, he would never be able to forgive himself. Once he finished patching the blonde woman up, Naruto grabbed some blood pills. He put them into his mouth and ignored the vile taste as he began to chew on them. When the pills were more liquid than anything, Naruto placed his mouth over Yugito's and began to use his tongue to push the mush into her mouth. He gently massaged her neck when Yugito made several gurgling noises, in order to help her swallow the medical supplement. Naruto checked her pulse again and sighed in slight relief as he found that despite the young woman's injury, she seemed to be out of danger. He tried to stand, only to find he was too tired to actually get up back up. Wrapping an arm under Yugito's bosom, Naruto dragged them both over to the wall with his other hand. Leaning back, Naruto sighed as he pulled Yugito the rest of the way onto his lap. "You know, you worried me?" Naruto said to her despite knowing she could not hear him. He put a hand to her cheek and began to caress her face, smiling as Yugito seemed to subconsciously know it was him and snuggled into it while purring lightly. Leaning down, Naruto kissed her forehead before putting his head to hers. "Looks like I've got to wait a few hours before I can get us out of here." He closed his eyes as he thought about the battle. Had it not been a last resort, he would have never used Kyuubi's chakra. Despite the great power he got from it, the chakra did not come without great cost as well. Often it would leave him exhausted. Because Kyuubi's chakra was extremely corrosive, Naruto had to apply a continuous stream of his own chakra in a protective layer under Kyuubi's. Even with his own ridiculously vast reserves, Naruto could only hold this form for several hours max. After that he would usually pass out from chakra exhaustion and unfortunately had yet to work a way around that problem. He also had to add on to the fact that while Kyuubi was not actively hindering his use of its chakra anymore, the intense feelings of rage and hatred that came with it could sometimes be overwhelming, which was the reason he could not go above 6 taels yet, even after extensive training. After an hour, Naruto felt he had enough chakra to start moving. Putting an arm under Yugito's legs and back, Naruto lifted himself and her off the ground. Looking around, Naruto found an opening in the ceiling where one of the misfired jutsus had hit. Moving up to it, Naruto channeled some chakra to his legs and jumped from the debris as he made his way out of the sewer. When Naruto left, a large plant-like man emerged from the ground. "This is not good. Leader Sama will not be pleased when we inform him of another failure." Zetsu looked over at the chunky remains of Kakazu's body. Moving over to Kakazu's hand, Zetsu grabbed the ring off the man's finger before eating the chunky remains of the corpse. Looking around and noticing there was nothing else, Zetsu left. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto sat in a chair right next to the bed that Yugito was laying in. He had managed to get to Kumo just under an hour after the battle and informed the Raikage of what happened. It had been about a day since then and the blonde woman had yet to awaken, a testament to just how badly she had been injured. Both of his hands were holding one of hers, gently caressing the back with his thumbs. Naruto frowned as he tried to think of a way he could have prevented this from happening, yet no matter how many angles he looked at it, he did not know what he could have done differently. Even though he knew of his opponent's abilities from Konan, had it not been for Kyuubi's chakra he would have most likely been defeated. While most people would consider it amazing that he was able to come out of a fight against S-class criminals alive, Naruto was not most people. Not being able to defend one of the people he cherished more than anything in this life or the next and nearly passing out from chakra exhaustion afterwards was not a solid victory, especially when the two people he fought were not at the top of the food chain in Akatsuki. "It just means I need more training," Naruto said to himself as he banished any defeatist thinking from his mind. He better than anyone knew that asking pointless what-ifs would not get him anywhere. His failure simply meant that he just had to try harder. "Next time I won't let one of my precious people get hurt," Naruto vowed to himself as he looked at Yugito's unconscious form. Naruto heard the door open but did not bother to look behind him. He already knew who it was. "What do you have for me?" the blonde asked as the man came to stand behind him. The person behind him sighed, "Unfortunately, I don't have any useful information on who could have given out the information about Yugito's mission." Naruto frowned and closed his eyes in thought. Ever since Jiraiya had given Kumo information on Akatsuki, the missions that the two Jinchuriki had taken were kept a secret from everyone except those with high levels of clearance. Very few people could have known not only that Yugito was on a mission but also where the mission took her. The only ones Naruto knew who had any clue about the missions undertaken were the Hokage and members of the Shinobi Council. This meant that there was a spy for Akatsuki in the council, since the Hokage was extremely loyal to his shinobi and would never sell one of them out, especially Yugito and his brother. This treachery did not surprise Naruto as much as it might have at one point in time. After all, Suna had had a spy in the council through the use of a slave seal. It could be something like that, or one or more of the counselors could have been bribed. There were a number of possibilities about why someone may be willing to sell out their Jinchuriki. "Would you mind if I look through the information you have found?" Naruto asked as he finally turned to the person he was talking to. A look distinctly uncomfortable to acquiesce to Naruto's request. In truth, the Hokage actually would not mind if the blonde shinobi looked through the reports he had gotten. He both respected and trusted the young man, especially when it came to Yugito. However, handing out classified information to a shinobi who belonged to a foreign village was extremely frowned upon, not just because of the political fallout he could get, but also because of how that information could be used against Kumo if the information got out to another village. Naruto sensei's hesitation. "Look, we both know that you have a traitor somewhere in your council. The only other people who knew where Yugito had gone were you and B. You would never betray one of your ninja, and B is almost like a brother to Yugito, so that leaves just one option." "Yes, I do know that, but we both know it's not that simple," I said in a gruff voice. In the end, it came down to whether or not he felt that the safety of Yugito was more important than the political fallout he would receive if anyone found out about this. In the end, the choice was no contest. "Very well, I will give you the information you need," I sighed as he came to a decision. His shinobi's lives were more important than what some scheming politician could do. "Thank you," Naruto said as he turned back to Yugito. I looked at the young man for a little while longer, before leaving to go get the files for him. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya set down his empty dish of sake as he sat at a bar in a village just inside Kinokuni. Grabbing the bottle next to him, he filled another glass and drank. The Sennin had decided to stop here while he waited for his apprentice to finish spending time with one of the three beautiful women that came into his life. Jiraiya let out a small perverted giggle as he thought of all the women his prized pupil had. The kid was an absolute goldmine when it came to material for his books. He was almost finished with his next one thanks to Naruto. He was even thinking of making another one called Icha Icha Cat Tales, after the success of his other book that the white-haired Sennin made based off of Naruto. He had a plan to write a book for each of the women Naruto was with. The Toad Sennin giggled perversely at the thought of his new books as well as the money they would make. Jiraiya set his saucer down and was about to grab more sake when a toad hopped onto the bar top with a scroll in its hand. "It's from Naruto." The toad held out a scroll. Jiraiya took the scroll from the toad that waited patiently for the Sennin to read it. Unrolling it, the Sennin began reading the contents. Jiraiya kept a mostly neutral expression when he read, but if one looked closely enough they could see a small trace of worry in the Sennin's countenance. When he finished reading the scroll, Jiraiya sighed. It seemed his apprentice always got into some kind of trouble no matter where he went. Jiraiya took out a blank scroll and started writing a letter to Tsunade. With the information Naruto gave, it was clear that his prized pupil was going to be in Kumo for a few days. Finishing it, he handed his scroll to the messenger toad. "Give this to Tsunade and let her know Naruto and I will be a few days late." The toad nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke. When it left, Jiraiya sighed as he ordered another bottle. Once it came, he got up and left, determined to find some good female company while he waited for his student. A perverse giggle came to his lips. "Pretty ladies, here I come." XXXXXXXXXXXX. Yugito groaned as she felt her eyes flutter open. She frowned in thought as she found herself staring at a wide ceiling, wondering where she was and how she got here. Her mind began to take in the information her senses were giving her, the smell of disinfectant that penetrated the area and the feel of the slightly lumpy bed she was under. As Yugito tried to figure out where she was through the thick haze of her mind, a voice spoke up. "I'm glad to see you're awake, kitten." "Nibi? What's going on?" All I remember was her eyes widened as she remembered her battle with Akatsuki. She tried to sit up only to fall back with a hiss as she felt a dull pain in her stomach. "Easy, kitten," Nibi said. "You took a pretty rough beating. Even I had a tough time healing you." "What happened? Where are we? And where is Naruto?" asked Yugito in a worried voice. "Your handsome mate is fine. We were lucky, kitten, it was because of him that you're still alive and I'm still with you. We're currently in the hospital where I've been trying to heal you for 3 days. We ended up using a lot of my chakra during that battle, so it took a lot longer than expected to heal you. That handsome young man of yours managed to carry you here after he finished those 2 Akatsuki members off. It was a good thing he gave you that beautiful ring of yours, Nee. I have to admit I'm pretty jealous. You have found quite the devoted man. He hasn't left your side since you two got here." "What do you mean?" As Yugito asked that, she felt something squeeze the fingers of her left hand. Looking down, she saw Naruto was sitting in a chair, his head was on the bed and his eyes were closed with his mouth slightly ajar, showing he was fast asleep. Yugito could not hold in the smile that came to her face as she looked at the young man. Lifting her unused hand, Yugito ran it through Naruto's hair. The young blonde man stirred a little but otherwise gave no other indication that he was waking up. Eventually finding that she was still exhausted, Yugito closed her eyes and went to sleep as well. A few hours later, Yugito woke up feeling a lot better. Closing her eyes for a moment, she let out a satisfied groan as she stretched herself out in very cat-like fashion. "I'm glad to see you're awake." Yugito smiled as she turned her head to the source of the voice to see Naruto on the chair right next to hers. "Naruto-kun." Naruto got up from his chair and moved over to her bed, where he sat next to her and leaned against the head of the bed, wrapping an arm around her shoulder and pulling the blonde woman close. Yugito leaned into the blonde as the two shared a companionable silence, just soaking up each other's presence. One of Naruto's hands reached out and gripped hers, while he let his fingers play with the ring he had gotten her. The band itself was made of white gold, which was a very rare and valuable metal in the elemental nations. Along the band were several motifs of the Nibi in various poses, as well as several Kyubis doing the same thing. The jewel in the middle was its favorite garnet, which was a shade of green that complemented her eyes and had a depiction of the Kumo symbol on it. The jewels on either side of it were red rubies that were cut into the shape of tails, with one side being 2 and the other being 9. Yugito looked at his hands and the ring with a smile, remembering how he had given it to her during a festival in a small town outside of Tsuki no Kuni called Gatakusarayampu. The comfortable silence was soon broken by Naruto. "How are you feeling?" Yugito sighed. "I don't know. I mean, I'm thankful that I'm alive and I don't feel any pain anymore, but the fact that I got beaten in a one-on-one fight even when I was using Nibi's full transformation is just frustrating." Naruto finished for her. He received a small nod. "I can understand that. It's never fun having your weaknesses and faults shown, but that just means you know what you need to work on now," Naruto said as he tried to give Yugito something positive to take out of this. He fell silent for a moment to let her reflect on that before continuing. "Still, at least 2 members of Akatsuki are dead, which means we have 2 less people to worry about coming after us. I suppose that's something," Yugito said with a smile at Naruto's optimistic attitude. "On to more important things," Naruto began as he handed Yugito the file he had been looking over. "I was looking through some files on the members of Kumo's council." He actually had several clones read it, but it amounted to the same thing. He had gone over every little tidbit of information he had been given on the counselors. Most of it were things that seemed to be the obvious activities to look for when dealing with a spy. Mainly the financial situation of the council members, how much money their accounts had received in the last few years, as well as any trips one of the council members went on, including trips for both business and pleasure. Most of that had led to a dead end. In Kumo, people rarely ever got out of Kaminari no Kuni except for the council member who was in charge of the Merchants Guild, and he went on so many trips that Naruto was unable to keep track of them. Naruto had also checked his own spy network and found that whoever it was had no other allies within Kumo. The spy had not gone to any of the other members of the council, as none of his seals had picked up conversation about Akatsuki or Yugito within or around the council chamber. Naruto had then been forced to check more personal information about individual members, finding any intel he could, ranging from personal beliefs to even personal hygiene, wanting to ensure that he left nothing out. It was there he had found a single lead. Kotake Mushibata had been a standing member of the council for 16 years, and had at one point been an extremely loyal ninja. Before joining the council, he had been one of Kumo's top jonin and even been a candidate for the position of Raikage. However, he had been chosen for the position both because of his prowess on the battlefield, where he had been able to match Minato Namikaze for a short time with his Raiten no Yoroi, and also because his little brother Kirabai had been chosen for the sealing of the 8 tails. After the third Raikage's public fallout and A's succession, Kotake had become disgruntled, opposing many of A's ideas, specifically the Raikage's decision not to go after the Byakugan after the Hyuga incident. It had become even worse after Killer Bee's sudden rise in fame and popularity, going from Kumo's hated demon to the guardian of Kumo, a title that had been bestowed upon him by the people of Kumogakure due to his constant desire to protect them. As time went by, the man's beliefs had begun to get so bad that most people on the council ignored him, something that had seemed to irk the man to no end. However, the most interesting piece of information Naruto had found was that Kotake had a single case of attempted rape on him that had been filed about 8 years ago. Fortunately, it was stopped before he could actually do anything. That in itself would not have gotten his attention. After all, rape was one of the most common crimes amongst ninja. What made this suspicious was because of just who Kotake had attempted to rape. Naruto reached over onto the table near the bed, grabbing a folder. He handed it to Yugito. "Yugi-chan, I want you to flip to page 56 and tell me what you know about the man in there," Naruto said. Yugito looked up from the folder to look at him for a second before doing as asked. Flipping through the pages, Yugito got to where Naruto told her and could not hold in her gasp. The file had the picture of a man with dark red hair, dark skin and black eyes. This man is... Yugito dropped the folder and closed her eyes as she remembered the night that man had almost raped her. The way the man had used some kind of seal to cut her off from Nibi's chakra, before she had the chance to retaliate and knocked her out. Waking up tied to a bed and having the man rip her clothes off, claiming she should be honored to serve him since that was all demons were good for. While Raikage-sama's Volt had managed to rescue her before anything could happen, it had still taken a year's worth of counseling sessions before she would let a man other than A and B near her. It did not help that the council had been comprised of several supporters of the third Raikage at the time, and had enough pull during that period that they had been able to get Kotake off with a year in prison and a warning. Afterwards, he had merely reclaimed his position on the council, through some kind of political loophole in Kumo's charter. She was jerked out of her thoughts as she felt an arm tighten around her waist. Turning her head and looking up, she saw Naruto staring at her with a concerned expression. "Are you alright?" he asked as he grabbed the folder and closed it. Perhaps it had not been a good idea to show her that. Yugito bit her lower lip as she blinked back the few tears that fell from her eyes. Leaning into Naruto, she buried her face in his shirt. Knowing she needed to be comforted, Naruto pulled her closer to him, and shifted her position so she was lying in between his legs. He gave her a chaste kiss on the head. "I'm sorry," Naruto apologized in a small whisper. "I probably shouldn't have showed you that." "It's okay." Yugito shook her head with her face still in Naruto's shirt. "It's just... I tried to forget that time when he tried to rape you." Naruto finished for her and received a small nod in the affirmative. "I was 13 when it happened," Yugito said as she brought her face out of his shirt to lean it on his shoulder as she told her story. "I won't claim that I had it as bad as other Jinchuriki. While most people have always been weary of me and kept their distance, I was never outright hated. However, there were a few people who completely despised me for what I hold." "People like Kotake?" Naruto asked. "Yes," Yugito nodded. "I had just been promoted to Jonin that day and was still fairly naive about the world. I had been on my way home when he stopped me to supposedly congratulate me. He was a council member, so I had no reason not to trust. Before I knew what was happening, he slapped something on my forehead and felt Nibi's chakra draining from me. The next thing I knew was waking up tied down to a bed and..." A small sob shook Yugito's body as she was unable to finish the sentence. Naruto's arms tightened around her form. "You don't have to say any more." Naruto put a hand under Yugito's chin and tilted her head up. Leaning down, he gave her a chaste kiss on the cheek just offside of her lips. "I doubt that man will be living much longer anyway." "What do you mean?" asked Yugito as blinked away her tears. "I mean, I was looking for any information that might give me a lead as to who let slip where your mission had taken you," Naruto replied as he picked up the folder. "Most of what I ran into were dead ends, but there were several discrepancies that I was able to find on Kotake, including his known hatred of Jinchuriki and his attempted rape on you. My guess is that Akatsuki somehow knew this and approached him a while ago." Naruto shrugged his shoulders. "Anyways, I'm going to suggest to have the man interrogated. If he does prove to be guilty, he'll be put to death for treason." "What if he's not?" questioned Yugito, worried that this may make him do something drastic to her in retaliation. Naruto shrugged. "If he's not, then he's going to regret not being killed after I get through with him, so it won't matter either way." "Don't do something you may end up regretting, Naruto-kun," Yugito said to him, even though she had to smile at his protectiveness over her. Naruto sighed. "No promises," he said as the two fell into a comfortable silence. It was half an hour later that Yugito spoke up. "You know you still owe me that date you promised." Naruto blinked as he looked at Yugito, who despite having a bit of blush also had a small smirk. Naruto grinned at the woman. I did promise you one after we finished fighting those guys, didn't I? Naruto asked rhetorically. Does this also mean you're also up for that trip to the communal hot springs? Yugito blushed in embarrassment but held her smile. We'll see. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Pain listened to Zetsu's report and watched the battle between the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, Kakazu and Hidan with a frown, while he had known that the boy was going to be a problem after they received that report on his time in Kiri. He had not counted on him being able to gain enough strength to defeat 2 members of Akatsuki. To make matters worse, they were now down another 2 members and only had the Rakubi to show for it so far, adding on to the fact that the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki would most likely grow even stronger. This news is troubling, the man said at last as his Rinnegan eyes scanned the others in the room. Kisame smirked. The Gaki's certainly gotten stronger from the little twerp Itachi and me ran into 4 years ago. I look forward to the day Samaheda and I can have a real fight with him. It should be interesting. Do you think we should go after him, Leader-sama? Asked Zetsu. Pain stayed silent for a moment as he tried to decide on a course of action. No, at the moment it would cause more trouble than it was worth. The 9 tails must be sealed last, that means we would need to keep him alive until we get the other Baiju sealed. Pain looked around at the others for a moment. We will continue gathering the other Jinchuriki and for the moment leave both the Ichibi and Nibi alone. They are not as important anyway. Itachi. Kisame. Pain called, getting Kisame to look at him and Itachi to open his eyes. How far are you from your target? I think we're pretty close, Kisame said with a shark-like grin. Samaheda is starting to get excited. I want you to capture the Gobi Jinchuriki as soon as possible, Pain said. The rest of you should also get your Baiju as soon as you can. Don't worry, yeah, Deidre said as he flexed his new arm. I'm almost near the Sanbi, we'll get that one soon, yeah. Yeah, Deidre-senpai is gonna lay it on that thing. Toby yelled out as he pumped a fist into the air. Toby, how many times have I told you to shut up, yeah, Deidre yelled. Oops, sorry senpai, Toby rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Don't worry, Toby will be a good boy. Standing next to Pain, Konan looked over the others with her usual blank mask. However, inwardly she was thankful that Pain was not sending anyone after Naruto yet. She was not looking forward to the time when Naruto would be in danger. Even as strong as he was, the blue-haired woman still feared for him. I hope all of this ends soon, she thought to herself. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. All of the members of the Kumo Council were currently sitting around the large stone table, wondering why it was they had been called so suddenly. While something like this was not unheard of, it was very rare for the Raikage to ever call a meeting. Normally only the most extreme emergencies could ever get him to even come to one, that or his attendant had to drag him. It was well known that the man disliked council meetings almost as much as he disliked paperwork, or anything that could take him away from his training. As the council continued talking, the door opened and in walked 3 figures. The first was easily recognized as the Yondaime Raikage, who was in front of the group. The second one the council recognized as Yugito, who was back in her standard shinobi garb. Many wondered what she was doing here but were not overly concerned since she was a shinobi of the village. However, it was the last figure that got most of the attention. Said figure was completely covered from head to toe in a black hooded cloak. The hood was up, covering the man's head in shadow, and he was wearing a black face mask. The only thing the group could make out were a pair of piercing blue eyes. Many of the people within the room were intimidated by the cloaked figure. None more so than Kotake, who as soon as the figure turned his eyes towards him felt an immense and concentrated dose of killing intent that made the traitorous council member nearly release his bowels before it withdrew. The Raikage went over to his seat with Yugito and the unknown figure following him, both of them standing on either side of the Raikage as he sat down. I would like to get back to work soon, so I am not going to beat around the bush, the Raikage started in a gruff voice. 4 days ago one of our shinobi was attacked by a group known as Akatsuki. There was a slight rumbling among the councilors as they began to talk, while occasionally throwing Yugito discreet glances. I am sure all of you know that after receiving information about this group from one Jiraiya of the Sennin, it was determined that we would be much more cautious about where we send our 2 greatest guardians. The Raikage was quiet for a while as he looked around at those in the room. Many seemed merely curious about what had happened, while a few seemed disgruntled. However, A had noticed that Kotake was looking nervous. His eyes were darting from himself. Yugito and the cloaked figure in the Raikage could see a sheen of sweat on the man's features. It seems Naruto is right, Kotake is a traitor. To be more careful, we deemed that only those with a high level of clearance would be able to have access to any information on where Yugito and B were sent. So imagine my surprise when an ally of ours came into Kuma 4 days ago with a bloody and beaten Yugito. At this information, many of the counselors looked over to Naruto. having managed to realize that he was the ally their Hokage was talking about. Now the reason I have called you all here is because it seems someone has betrayed this village, giving information on the location of one of my most valuable ninja to a group of S-class criminals. I raised a hand, and before any of the people knew what was happening, several of Volt officers appeared and surrounded one Kotake Mushibata. Said man, who had previously been sweating, stood on his feet. Hokage-sama, what is the meaning of this? He shouted as he tried to bluff his way out of the situation he now found himself in. I thought it would be obvious, Kotake, I said in a dark tone as he glared at the man. You have been found guilty of treason and will be interrogated and then tried. Volt, take him away, and put him in one of the holding cells until he can be interrogated. The man began to struggle as the Volt officers began to drag him out. As he flailed, he looked around wildly, and soon his eyes found who he felt was the reason behind his problems. The person who had caused him so many issues. You bitch! Kotake shrieked out as he glared at Yugito with an expression that spoke of madness. I should have killed you when I had the chance, you fucking dirty demon gurgle. Everyone stared wide-eyed as the cloaked man stood right in front of Kotake, having seemingly just appeared there. They looked over to where he had been only to see the fading of an afterimage. Looking back to Kotake, they saw the man was now clutching at his throat, which had several senbon pierced into it. You're going to want to take him to your best medical ninja, the cloaked man said in a whispery voice that sent chills down the spines of everyone in the room. I just destroyed his voice box, so if you want a confession it will need to be fixed. Spinning on his heel, the man walked back to the Hokage's side. Did you really have to do that? The Hokage asked the man in a whisper once he got back as he shot the cloaked figure a glare. Said man just looked at him. He insulted Yugi-chan. In my books that's ground rules for death, so you're lucky he is still whole and will be able to talk after he gets healed. The Hokage just sighed, realizing that with all the things he had seen this man do for Yugito, it should have been obvious he would not put up with someone insulting her. He gave the man a nod before turning back to the rest of the council. That was all I wished to discuss with you today. Tomorrow we will hopefully have a confession from Kotake, and if he is found guilty, schedule his execution. The council stood up, with many of them on slightly shaky legs. Most of the members were feeling very disturbed by what they had just witnessed. When all of them had left, the cloaked figure pulled down his hood and mask, letting his spiky golden blonde hair and 6 whisker marks show. The moment he did pull down his mask, Yugito pulled him into a hungry kiss. While he had not expected it, that did absolutely nothing to stop him from returning it. Thank you, Yugito mumbled against his lips, with her voice as nothing more than a whisper. Naruto pulled back from the kiss and gave the young blonde woman a happy smile. You know, there's no need to thank me. I did this because I wanted to, because I care for you and because I love you. Yugito smiled at his words before Naruto turned to the Hokage. When do you guys plan on interrogating Kotake? I blinked as he registered the question. We will be doing it sometime tomorrow, which reminds me. The Hokage turned his eyes on Yugito. Do you want to be there for the interrogation? Yugito gained a surprised look. She paused as she looked down at her feet. She really did not want to be in that man's presence again. Even today, just being in the same chamber as him made her feel vulnerable and frightened. She knew it was an irrational fear, and the best way to get rid of it was to confront the thing she feared, yet at the same time the thought of being anywhere near that man was absolutely terrifying. She was jerked from her thoughts as it wrapped around her shoulder. Turning her head, she saw that it was Naruto looking at her with a concerned expression. She gave him a small smile to let him know she appreciated his support. Leaning her head on his shoulder, she closed her eyes as she tried to make a decision. I suggest you go, kitten. I don't know Nibi, that man, he frightens you. I know, Nibi cut the woman off, but that's all the more reason to go. You need to confront this, or finding any kind of peace will be impossible. Yugito sighed as she opened her eyes and looked at If I do go, would it be alright if Naruto was there as well? The Hokage frowned in thought for a moment before deciding. I suppose he can, replied. The blonde shinobi was already knee-deep in this situation anyway, so it was not like having him there would make a difference. The blonde may even be able to offer some useful insight. Provided I get a signed contract stating you will not reveal our interrogation techniques, I said. Naruto grinned. I have a better idea. Reaching into his pouch where there was a puff of smoke, he pulled out a scroll and tossed it to the Hokage. I looked at the scroll, which had the kanji for torture on it, before looking at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. That contains torture and interrogation methods I came up with myself during my travels and the Bloodline Civil War. If you wish to keep your own methods a secret, you can use those, Naruto said in answer to the large man's silent question. Despite being surprised that the man would give something like this, I merely nodded. Very well, we will use these so that you can come as well. The interrogation will start early tomorrow morning at 8 AM, so don't be late. Naruto nodded. "We won't," he replied before turning his attention back to Yugito. Sticking his arm out to her, he gave the woman a smile. "Now that this is over with for now, how would like to go out and get some sushi?" The Raikage let out a chuckle as Yugito grabbed Naruto by the arm and ran so fast the young man was pulled off his feet, as she dragged him to her favorite sushi bar. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto absently ate the sushi on his plate, as he watched the blonde woman next to him scarf down her food like it was going out of style. Long-time association with Yugito had made him used to her eating habits, which never really bothered him to begin with since he ate ramen the same way she ate sushi. So we really had a traitor in the council. Naruto turned his attention to Amoy, who managed to keep the sucker in his mouth despite eating his food. It makes you wonder if we might have more traitors somewhere. If we had one traitor already, there's no reason to assume we might not have another. Or perhaps he was working for someone outside of Kumo. Maybe we even have a traitor within the daimyo's court. Or it could. Smack. "Damn it, Amoy, shut your paranoid mouth." Kuro scowled at the blonde-haired Kumo shinobi, as she smacked him in the back of the head. "If you keep this up, then even I'm gonna be paranoid." Amoy picked his head out of his plate, wiping off the noodles he had managed to get on it. "You two should keep it down," Samui said in her cool and professional voice. "We could get kicked out if you cause a ruckus." Naruto shook his head at the two Chunin, who had picked up their argument again while Samui tried to be a mediator. He and Yugito had run into the three on their way to Yugito's favorite sushi bar. The three had already heard rumor about what had happened and decided to follow the two. Amoy and Kuro had tried to force an explanation out of Yugito, however she had not been comfortable talking about what happened. Naruto had been the one to discuss the events that had occurred within the council chamber, though he made sure to leave out some of the details as he did not know how much he wanted others to know. Naruto sensed movement coming towards his plate, and used his reflexes to grab the hand that had been just about to steal some of his sushi. He looked over to the owner of said hand and grinned. "Now Yugi-chan, it's not nice to steal my food." Yugito flushed with a bit of embarrassment at being caught. She tried to move her hand away but Naruto was holding fast. "Let go of my hand," Yugito said as she continued her effort to pull it out of his. "Now why would I do that?" Naruto asked rhetorically as he gave the blonde woman his foxy smile. "You would just try to steal my food again." "Because you love me," Yugito answered with a smile as she tried to appeal to him. Well, that is true." Naruto trailed off as if in thought. However, rather than let go, Naruto brought Yugito's hand to his lips and began to plant kisses on it. He scooted his seat up a bit as he trailed kisses from her hand and moved up her arm, causing the woman to blush as she felt her body begin to heat up. Finally Naruto was right next to her. Yugito found herself leaning into him as he wrapped an arm around her shoulder. As she looked up, Yugito noticed that his face was much closer than before and was getting closer. She slowly followed his actions as she closed her eyes. Just as their lips were about to touch, a cough interrupted them. Yugito blushed in embarrassment while Naruto was grinning like a fox, as the other three they were with stared at them. "Not that I don't mind you guys doing that," Kuro said with a large blush. It was the first time Naruto had heard her speak without yelling. "But you, if you're going to, you should really get a room." While Yugito blushed, Naruto just smirked. "You know, you guys didn't have to come with us. Or if we're making you uncomfortable, you could just leave," Naruto suggested. Kuro sputtered for a bit before she glared at him. "This is a public restaurant, you can't go sucking face here." Naruto merely grinned. "I think you're just jealous that Yugi-chan got a totally awesome and sexy man like me and you don't." "That's it," Kuro yelled with an embarrassed blush as she tried to lunge across the table, however she was quickly restrained by both Samui and Amoy. "You need to calm down, Kuro. Be more like our large-breasted leader," Amoy grunted as he was elbowed in the face. "Shut up. I'm gonna kill him," Kuro yelled as she tried to kick the two off of her. Yugito shook her head and sighed, wondering how she ended up with such an unusual group of friends and an even weirder fiancé. "You know you love it," Nibi spoke up in her mind. "At least nothing's ever boring." "Not now, Nibi. Spoil sport. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Yugito and Naruto stood behind a large one-way glass window. On the other side was Kotake and one of the Volt members who specialize in interrogation. Kotake looked like he had been roughed up the night before. The man's arms and legs were currently bound to a metal chair that was bolted to floor. He had several cuts, bruises and contusions on his face. His left eye was swollen shut and black and his lips were split. Naruto knew it was standard procedure to beat a prisoner before the interrogation started in order to weaken their resistance. While he himself had never done that since he was on the road and never actually took prisoners, he had seen it during the war when he was forced to participate in a few interrogations. "Kotake, we can do this the easy way or the hard way," the vault officer, a man with spiky black hair and several scars going from the top of his brow to his lower cheeks, said. "I'm not gonna tell you shit." Kotake screamed as blood and spittle came out of mouth. "You stupid demon lovers can all go to hell." The scarred man shrugged before taking out the scroll the Hokage had given him. "Very well, the hard way it is," he said. Going over to a table, the man unrolled the scroll and unsealed its contents, revealing several dozen odd-looking pins. The odd pins were sharp at the bottom point and around the middle, split off into two fairly decent-sized chunks of metal with red tips. Altogether the device was about 5 inches long. Another thing the vault officer noted were all of the seals which were on the pins, running along their entire length. Kotake's eyes widened as the scarred man grabbed several of the pins and a small metal pole with a 2 inches radius and a length of 5 inches and began to walk up to him. Trying to feign courage, Kotake laughed. "What are those things? Some kind of new acupuncture treatment?" The scarred man grinned. "Something like that." He had read what these were designed to do last night and could not help but admit that he was impressed. Whoever had come up with this way of torture was a genius. As soon as the scarred man got close enough to Kotake, he jabbed one of them in the man's shoulder, right between the joint where the humerus bone connected to the ball socket. Kotake gave a wince as a sharp jolt of pain stabbed through him, but still decided to use whatever bravado he had left. "Humph, that's it? I guess I shouldn't expect much from an incompetent fool like you." The scarred man said nothing, merely took the small metal pole and as gently as he could tapped both of the protruding pieces of metal on the pin while channeling chakra through them. There was a small ding before Kotake let loose a large scream of anguish. "Gra. These pins are designed to unleash 65 volts of lightning when I channel chakra through them," the vault officer told the man. "It tends to screw up the nervous system and cause a lot of pain. Add on to the fact that the vibrations from the pin is grinding against your joints and you can see why it would not be very comfortable." "Ha," Kotake laughed, though it sounded more like a pained wheeze. "You think this is painful? This is nothing." The vault officer merely added another pin, this one set in the socket joint between the humerus bone, the radius and ulna. Taking the metal pole, he tapped both of them, getting an even louder and more pain scream from the man. "Did you know that water is a natural conductor for lightning?" the scarred man asked in a conversational tone as if discussing what to have for dinner tonight. "The human body is made up of 90% water, which naturally makes it easier for lightning to travel through your body, but you should already know this, right?" As if to emphasize his point, the scarred vault tapped both pins again, eliciting another yell from the man as electric currents flooded his nerves and the vibrations of the pins and movements Kotake made caused his socket joints to vibrate and grate against each other. "Quite painful, isn't it? All of this can be over soon if you just tell me what I want to know," the vault officer said in the same calm tone he had used since the interrogation began. "Fuck you. Seems I need to add another one." Yugito watched with an odd sort of fascination as the man used those odd pins which had to cause excruciating pain, if the Kotake screams were any indication. While she knew about torture and interrogation, Yugito had never done it herself. Her main job had always been either assassination or search and destroy missions. As she looked at the man whose screaming seemed to have increased in both frequency and volume, the blonde woman could not hold in a small wince, while a part of her could not deny that she felt good seeing someone who had tried to rape her in excruciating agony. Another felt sickened at seeing the man in pain, as well as the fact that she enjoyed seeing him in such agony. She was knocked out of her thoughts when she felt a hand move into hers and give it a gentle squeeze before lacing its fingers with her own. Turning her head, she saw Naruto giving her a supportive smile, even though he himself did not like watching others tortured. No matter who they were. Yugito gave him a small smile of gratitude for his support as she turned her attention back to the odd session. "Bastard." Kotake breathed out as the intense pain he was in finally stopped for a moment. The man currently had 6 pins stuck in him, and while nothing else had changed on the outside, on the inside his body felt like it had been dipped in molten lava. "Still not ready to talk, eh?" asked the vault officer as he grabbed another pin. Kotake's eyes widened as the man grabbed another pin. Each time one was stuck in him, it seemed to increase the pain by several fold. The man was just about to stick another one in him when, "All right. I'll tell you." The scarred man pulled the needle back. "Well, I did sell out both demons to Akatsuki. They offered to pay me a lot of money and I was more than happy to do it," Kotake started. "But that's not all. I was also asked to gra." They had stopped mid-speech and let loose a torrential scream. None of the people watching knew what was going on until they saw a seal begin to light up on the man's forehead. Naruto instantly recognized it as some kind of dead man switch. Most were usually placed around the heart and were designed to kill someone instantly with the hand sign. It was actually this seal which had created the birdcage seal. This one was obviously a modified version of that. Shit. Naruto cursed as he and the other two people rushed out of the room and into the interrogation chamber. Hold him still, Naruto shouted as Kotake began to bleed through his eyes, ears, nose and pores as he started to spasm. The scarred interrogations expert grabbed the convulsing man as Naruto ran up to him. After inspecting the man, he forced Kotake's mouth open and for just a moment saw a seal on the man's tongue before it disappeared. As it did, Kotake's convulsing stopped. Checking the man's pulse, he confirmed that Kotake had died. He's dead, Naruto announced. It looks like a modified version of a dead man's switch. I'll have to take a look at it later to figure out what it was exactly. Damn. Naruto cursed as he punched his open palm. He barely gave out any information. That's true, the Hokage said, but what we do have is quite valuable, and if I heard right, he was going to sell out B2. Yeah, but since he's dead, that does not really help the situation. Naruto gave a sigh as he ran a hand through his hair. I'm going to study the seal designs I saw and see what I can make of them. I'll return with the info sometime today or tomorrow. Okay, I appreciated you doing this, the Hokage said. Naruto waved it off. Not at all. Yugi-chan is important to me, so anyone or anything that threatens her is my enemy. Yugito blushed at the comment, while the Hokage laughed and the scarred interrogator merely looked amused. XXXXXXXXXXXX. A day later, Naruto found himself knocking on the door to the Hokage's office. Come in. Opening the door, Naruto entered to find Day lifting weights like he always does when at work. I have the information on the seals. The Hokage dropped his weight as he sat up and put his hands on the desk. Excellent, what have you found out? Naruto unrolled a scroll and put it on the Hokage's desk. On it showed two seals. The Hokage was able to recognize the seal on the left as the one that appeared on Kotake's head when he died. The second one, however, he did not recognize. The first seal I'm sure you recognize, Naruto began without preamble as he pulled up a seat. It's the dead man's switch and is normally specifically designed to stop the heart through the use of a hand sign. This one, however, has been heavily modified. Where the other was designed to stop the heart in one go, this seal's function was to not only stop the brain from functioning but also destroy the entire brain starting at the frontal lobe. That would confirm what the autopsy on Kotake showed, said as he confirmed Naruto's theory. When the morticians had gone over Kotake's body, they had claimed that the entire brain had been liquidated. Naruto gave a nod of acknowledgement before continuing, however the seal was also linked. Here Naruto pointed over to the other seal, to this one, whose main purpose was to activate the dead man's switch. Whenever Kotake began to talk about a specific subject, we can assume that since he had been about to give us information on Akatsuki, that they were the ones who put the seals on him, though he did not seem to know that. What Naruto didn't mention about all this was that the kind of work required to modify and link the two seals together was impossible for many people to do. When the blonde had first heard about Kotake taking away Nibi's power from Yugito, he had immediately recognized that the disgusting excuse for a man must have used some kind of seal similar to the Gagyo Fuin that Orochimaru had used to cut him off from Kyuubi during the Chunin exam several years ago. He himself had several seals that were based off of that one which he and Jiraiya had made in case Kyuubi's chakra overtook him and there was no one who could stop him from going on a rampage, but he and Jiraiya were seal masters. So Naruto had to wonder where the man could have gotten such a thing, especially since seals were an extremely difficult and obscure art to learn. Very few people ever became proficient with seals and even fewer mastered them. So for that man to have a seal designed to cut off a Jinchuriki from their tenant's chakra meant that he had someone who had been working for him, or the more likely case that he had been working for someone that gave it to him. While the seals used to seal of Nibi's chakra could be done by anyone who was proficient enough in seals, the fact that Kotake had an extremely powerful and complex seal on him that was designed to kill him told Naruto that there was a seal master at work. The blonde wished he had his spy network back then so he could find out who had given him the seals. However, he knew it was a moot point right now, and that he would have to look into it later. Naruto. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts and focused his attention on sorry, I was thinking about something. What were you saying again? The Hokage shook his head for a moment before speaking. I was just asking if you think there may be any more spies in the council? Naruto hummed and thought before speaking. It's perfectly possible, though you can never know for certain until something happens or you interrogate everyone on the council. Still, it would be best to play it safe and assume that there is another spy, either on the council or among the populace. The Hokage nodded, having come to the same conclusion, though it was always good to hear a second opinion, and he trusted the Uzumaki Namikaze heir. "Very well, I appreciate the help." "Not at all," Naruto replied as he sat up, "I'm always glad to be of assistance to my friends." I watched as the man offered a nod of respect and walked out the door. When the door closed, the Hokage picked up his weights and began lifting again. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Using the key Yugito gave him, Naruto unlocked the door to her apartment, putting his cloak up on a stand before walking into the bedroom. When he got there, a small smile formed on Naruto's face as he spotted Yugito sleeping on the bed, rolling around every now and then as she made small, cute noises in her sleep. Naruto took off his clothes and put them in an extra dirty bin hamper that they had gotten just for him. Since Naruto visited often, he and Yugito had actually gone out and gotten several things for him for when he came over. Naruto now had his own dresser filled with shinobi and civilian clothing and toiletries in her bathroom. Kirabai and A had actually joked that Naruto might as well live with Yugito. Of course, that had gotten the both of them hit on the head by an embarrassed and angry Yugito. When Naruto finished getting ready to sleep, he walked over to the bed and slid under the covers. Almost as soon as he did, Yugito turned over and, as if sensing his presence, latched onto him and pulled him closer to her so that half of her body was on top of him, with one leg intermixed with his own and one arm over his chest. Naruto chuckled as he pulled an arm around the blonde woman, who gave a sigh of content before snuggling closer. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Jiraiya looked over as Naruto appeared right next to him in a yellow flash. "So I take it you've got everything squared away in Kumo?" Naruto nodded. "Yes, there were a few extra problems I had to deal with, but they were taken care of." "How did Tsunade take it?" Jiraiya winced. "Let's just say that I am not looking forward to seeing her and giving an explanation as to why you went off to face two Akatsuki members on your own." Naruto felt a small shiver run down his spine but ignored as they began walking again. "Well, I didn't have much of a choice." Yeah, I know they would have gotten one of your girlfriends," Jiraiya grinned. "I think I'll put that in my next book. The hero goes off and saves his beloved from death, then gets his reward of oomph." Jiraiya found himself face first in the dirt as Naruto smashed a fist into the back of his head. "If you keep doing this, Uro-sensei, one day you're going to regret it." Jiraiya got up and rubbed the back of his head, mumbling about no good gakis who gave no respect to their elders. As they continued on their way, Naruto smiled as he thought about how everyone would react to his return, as well as how good it would be to see the Rookie 11 and the rest of his friends in Konoha. That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.